Good afternoon. Welcome back. It is day 4 of the Karen Read trial in Massachusetts. Karen Read is accused by the state of intentionally hitting her boyfriend, Officer John O'Keefe, with her car and leaving him to die in the snow in front of the home of another police officer. The defense is arguing that this is all a cover-up and that she was framed and that the investigation is hopelessly compromised. Before lunch, we had one witness on the stand finishing up from yesterday, and then the jury went on a jury view after some contentious arguing about impeachment evidence. The jury view seemed to end a little bit before lunch, and then they put on a witness for just a few minutes, and then that witness was off the stand, and then they went to lunch. The timing of it all was very strange. I'm like, why don't you just send them to lunch early and then just resume instead of putting a witness on for 10 seconds and then taking that witness off the stand? So what we are going to look at is the media coverage of the jury view. There's just a little bit that clarifies what car was there at the jury view. Then we're going to go to the before lunch quick segment of the next witness. That'll be the 10th witness in the case. And then we will go to the after lunch segment and then get caught up. At some point, they will take an afternoon break and they should be done in just a few hours. So I had meetings over lunch. So thank you. I got the hair a little more dry. We're not all the way done. We're like half-sies done. So with all of that, the scheduling on this case has been strange. It's been strange, y'all. It's been strange. So, law nerds, it's time to ride. We're going back to court. I don't know. Where's my gavel? We need to get back to court, y'all. Let's roll the intro. Let me know what you had for lunch, and I will see you on the other side of the intro.
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not... Let's get into it.
You guys all had good stuff for lunch. Look, I'm telling you right now, I've got cheese and crackers for lunch. It's basically a Lunchable over here. I am of that generation where I just make myself Lunchable for lunch. So we're going to go to what the media has put out of the jury view. I skimmed through this a little on preview. It doesn't look like anyone is shown. So we are going to take a look at this. What we see in frame is a Lexus LX 570. I don't know if this is exactly the defendant's car or not. Hopefully that'll become clear later. So I'm just going to roll this and see what we see from the media that was present or somewhat close and present to the jury view. Or if this was right after. I can't tell you the voices that are heard. Don't know who they are. I'm sure we'll probably see it later. It's a house. You know what it looks like it has is a camera. I don't know if that camera was there at the time that this happened 2 years ago, or if that is new.
Sorry, Zip.
That looks like a completely missing tail light that they've zoomed in on. So I wonder if this is actually the defendant's car. Isn't the Lexus LX like their top SUV, like above the GX? I'm not a supercar person, but I think like RX GX LX is like the bougiest of the bougie. So I'm imagining that's the okay, but is there any other damage to the car? Is this damage to the car like right, see if I can get my mouse into that area, like right here above the taillight? It's hard to tell, but it looks like there might be some damage to the car or rust spots right above the taillight.
Yes.
But it's hard to tell, and then it looks, thank you for zooming in. Right up at the top here, it looks like where you see that little bit of damage to the vehicle. They're definitely not going to cover the license plate. She's not getting this car back anyway, so. they're not going to blur it out. It's in other photos that are going to be in evidence. So that's the, I mean, I can't imagine the broken taillight came all the way out unless law enforcement took it apart. I guess we'll hear it when we see that evidence and that testimony. I appreciate the zoom in. It just, okay. I mean, it looks like they removed the whole taillight area and took it out. I don't see any other body damage either, but I don't know if there's body damage lower down or that just that little spot up over there. I don't know if the hood is popped or not. So other vehicles still driving down the street, but this gives you a little bit more sense of the house. You know what I don't see? I don't see the flagpole. I don't see the fire hydrant. I do see the driveway, but the view of the house we've had has been like the front door part. Like this side of the house back where the car is parked, we have not seen much. There's the fire hydrant and Emily, keep watching. Okay, but how far is this away from? So closer to the road, because you can see the curb at the very bottom of the screen, but it's a weird angle. Like we don't need the cinematic shot. We just need you to stand up and walk the road. Somebody let me direct. This is why if I needed to, I would go out to crime scenes to do photos. If the crime scene was still substantially the same after the fact, I'm like, those photos are not going to show the jury shit. We're going back out and doing this again. Because I know what I have to argue in court. Like, great. But the driveway is on the other side. I had no idea the driveway was all the way on the other side from the fire hydrant where that blue car is parked. And there's no curb. Like, where I live in Tennessee, where that street is, there would be like a whole, like a whole ravine, a furrow. There would be like a little ravine between the street or a curb, but there's no curb over in this area. It's just grass over in that area. The curb is over by the mailbox. It'd be interesting if we got a wide shot so that you could see where the driveway is and where the fire hydrant is in the same shot. That would be interesting. There's a still photographer there. I can see that Canton lens hanging. The Lexus is there. I'm sure we'll have lots of photos of that in the media later. That was not, God, the Blair Witch effect. Good God. I wonder if jurors were walking by. The Blair Witchification. Sorry, everybody who gets motiony. I'm going to wait until they stop spinning around in a circle. I don't know if there's anything else helpful. That's not helpful. I wish they would have filmed just after the jurors left, if that was the issue. Oh, they took out the whole dash. They took out the whole dash. Well, we know that they've taken the backup camera and everything. So. For those of you asking in the chat, who took the photos at the beginning of this crime scene? Literally no idea. I literally no idea. They're terrible. I don't know why the cameraman is trying to make us all motion sick. I think they're probably trying to avoid things while they are doing a feed. That's the interior console of the car. The things that have been taken out of the car. I remember the prosecution said to focus on the center console. I don't know if the focus on the, which is, I appreciate that they photographed it. I don't know if it's because of the way you would reverse the car. I don't know. They took all the car tracking data, including GPS, including the backup camera. They took all of that out.
Something to do, right? Yeah, exactly.
Make it a guys, cool guy.
I always love when people are just chatting. It's like somebody's streaming this with audio, y'all. But oh, okay. I believe there's a test with the backup camera. We'll see. That looks like a still photographer with a monopod. The back of the car. The removed taillight. Like the whole taillight casing.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch it.
That's what I was pointing to earlier. And that's rusted. This car has been, I would imagine, in impound since this happened. So, I don't know where the rest of the. I mean, okay. That's the, okay, that's the car. There is a curb right at that part of the house, but it looks like the curb ends as you get over to where the fire hydrant is.
Like my parents watch the live stream and shit, and I'll tune in. I can't listen to the guy just fucking talk. Yeah, you know, it's just spell a ton of shit. And then it's like, oh, this, you lost it.
Yeah, right.
Are they talking about the prosecutor? Who's talking about the prosecutor? I can't fucking listen to that guy talk. Who's talking about the prosecutor? What is happening? Okay. Emily, did you gain your audio up? Oh, yeah, our audio's gained up. Who's talking about the prosecutor that's out at this scene right now? Did you hear that? Oh my God, I'm going to back this up. The closed captioning is catching it. Somebody said, yeah, I've been watching the live streams, but I can't fucking listen to that guy talk. I don't know which one they're talking about, to be fair.
Yeah, that's my thing. That's what I say. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, he's a dick. He's a kook, but he isn't. So, it's like, you know, I just, like my parents watch the live stream and shit, and I'll tune in. I can't listen to the guy just fucking talk. Yeah, you know, it's just spell a ton of shit.
Who's a dick? Why is the tea being spilt?
Yes, you lost it.
Yeah, right.
Is that it? Okay. I don't know if that stream paused. I don't know why. There's no. That's interesting. That's. I don't know who's talking, but that's hilarious. Somebody's parents are watching. Hi, you're probably watching here. It's good to see you. I don't know why this is completely frozen. Give me a second and let's see if I can figure it out. It might just be because the stream has gotten too far ahead. No, it froze and then it went back to it froze on that still image. I wonder if they stopped the stream, if somebody said we can hear you and they just stopped it because it went back to the fan. So that was pre-recorded from the jury view. Yeah, well, somebody's got some thoughts. Let's go to the testimony from right before lunch, and then we're going to go to the testimony after lunch. So let's switch me talking to myself in the control room. Let's switch tabs here. Let's gain our audio back up. I'm nosy, man. If people are talking and we can hear them, I want to hear what they have to say. So that was that's the yellow pill in the chat said that's going to be a meme somewhere. Now I just want to know which one they're talking about. Who is that? A jury member talking? No, the jurors were not on scene. That was somebody from the media. I just don't know which media it was. So that is what that was. So that was spicy. All right, let's head back to this feed.
You in this courtroom. Okay. So with
I hate that this cuts in while the judge is already on the bench and talking. Has there been a trial more frustrating with that? Like already talking to the lawyers. Can we just how can we know what's going on? I mean, I guess this is outside of the presence of the jury, but we're in it now.
that, Mr. Lally, do you have a witness for us?
Yes, sir. The Commonwealth will call Mr. Gregory Woodbury to the stand.
So this is going to be witness 10 after, this is before lunch after the jury view. I've already forgotten what he said. Gregory Woodbury. So this is after the jury view. So let's see, jury view. So there's a witness and then lunch.
All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Greg Woodbury, Woodbury.
And what do you do for work, sir?
Lieutenant paramedic on the Canton Fire Department.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton?
Why is there no sound?
About 24 years now.
Not much I can
How long
do.
have you had the rank of lieutenant in the Canton Fire Department?
That's been 8 years now.
Now, prior to working with Canton Fire Department, what, if any, other work did you have within that same sort of?
Is that low to you?
Prior to being on Canton Fire, I was an EMT paramedic in the North Shore area.
Because that sounds really low to me.
If you could just, with regard to your working as a paramedic and a fire.
Sounds good to you guys? Okay.
This
It might be
is
me.
being a paramedic. What, if any, sort of specialized training did you receive in regard to, or certifications did you receive in regard to being a paramedic?
So after I got my EMT, when I went to paramedic school, I went to Northeastern University. It was a 1-year full-time program.
And following, you successfully completed that program, is that correct?
Yes.
And is there any sort of continuing educational component or recertification component in regard to your paramedic?
Okay, you guys can hear fine.
Yeah, every 2 years, paramedics have to recertify. We're required to get so many hours of continuing education.
Yeah, we're aware.
To recertify every 2 years.
If I could turn your attention to the date of January 28th,
Yeah, Lolly is a bit low.
January 29th, 2022. Were you working with the Canton Fire Department on that day?
Yes.
And what kind of shift were you working on that occasion, if you recall?
It was a 24-hour shift.
He zoomed through the background training and experience. So thank the Lord for
8
that.
a.m. to 8 a.m. the next day.
Did you hear how fast he went through it?
Turning your attention to the 29th, at what point did you sort of get up and start to begin your day at the fire station?
So a normal day, sorry, was that my beginning of the shift you're talking about or the end of the shift? Okay, so the second part of the shift. Normally we get up at 6 for the officers, but I got up a little earlier then because we had the snowstorm coming in. So I had to make sure everything was shoveled. I think I got up about maybe 5, check the apron of the area in front of the station, and make sure the walkways were clear.
And when you got up to check that, what, if anything, did you?
It had been snowing. There was blizzard type conditions coming in. So it was a decent level of snowfall there.
Blizzard type conditions coming
maybe
in.
2-3 inches on the ground at that time.
And as far as with reference to that, what, if anything, did you do to?
I think we can move quickly through this part of it. The cleaning the apron.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, did you watch Legally Blonde last night? Did in your soul you want to say, I think we've established that you were in the shower? Your Honor is having her Legally Blonde moment. I think we can move past this. I think we've established it was snowing, cleaning the apron. The judge is like, we're done. I mean, we were there yesterday, but that's hilarious. The judge is like, we've established that it was snowing. Well, cheers for that. Cheers to that. I think we've established.
Okay.
Delightful.
That particular
Thank God.
shift, how are you assigned within the fire?
I can't hear Lolly
I
for
was
shit, but
lieutenant
thank
on
God.
Engine 4.
And,
That's hilarious.
With respect to that, at some point shortly after 6 a.m., did you receive a dispatch to a call?
Yes, yeah, we're dispatched to a call for a person in the snow.
And did you respond to that call, sir?
Yes, I did.
And
Take the hint, Lolly.
assigned to the engine, is that correct?
Correct.
Who, if anyone else, was assigned to the engine that day with you on that shift?
So we had Cade McLaughlin and Frank Walsh were my two engine crew.
And in addition
To be fair, for those of you that can't hear Lolly, the questioning, this whole line of questioning is going to be, did you go to the call? What route did you take? What's your background, training, and experience? Who else was on the fire truck? We've heard it over and over and over. So hopefully the closed captioning's helped. Yes, he's really low, but that's what we're getting into. I'll try to find another feed for after lunch.
any other sort of vehicles or apparatuses?
Ambulance 1 also responded with us.
And car 5.
So that was Tony Flamati, Matt Kelly, and Tim Nuttall had also hopped on the ambulance. He was coming in for the shift in the morning, came in early to beat the storm.
And do you recall where the call was in regards to what the address was?
I don't remember the address offhand, but it was not that far away in the district.
And when you arrived in the engine, when you first arrived on scene, as you were arriving on scene, what, if anything, did you sort of see as upon your arrival?
So the police were already there.
Stop saying sort of.
Approaching the scene.
We don't
want
wanna
to
know-
several people.
We don't
off
want to
to the
know what
side.
he sort of saw. When you arrived on scene, what did you see? We were doing so well this morning.
Side, in the yard, doing something. So we went to investigate that.
Say off to the side, was that to your left, your right, or something?
So the way I was approaching the street, it was on the left-hand side.
We were doing so
And
well.
you indicated you see some group of people, is that correct?
Yeah, there was a few people around. I don't remember exactly how many or what they were doing.
And when you start to make your way over there, what, if any, when you arrive on scene,
Yep.
what is sort of the first thing you do?
So we went to evaluate the patient. So, I believe someone had started CPR prior to us getting there. So we went to continue that.
When you say someone had started CPR prior to you,
I don't remember the particular individual that was doing it as we arrived.
my only question, sir, so it's someone outside.
It doesn't matter. We've heard from everyone on the truck. The jury
I
knows.
don't know if it was one of the police officers or someone else.
I don't remember.
That was me sighing on purpose because these are the same questions we've gotten into
Now, obviously, you're
thoroughly.
response to an unresponsive male, correct?
Yes.
And at the time that you're arriving on scene, you say you see sort of a cluster of people. Were you able to see that unresponsive male at that point?
Not in the vehicle, not until I exited the vehicle.
And at some point, much later or subsequently, did you come to learn the identity of the unresponsive male or the patient that you were involved in?
Afterwards, they told me yes. At the time, I did not know.
And what did you learn his name to be subsequently?
I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous and blanking right now.
Was it Mr. John O'Keefe?
Yes, correct.
And when you first came over to where Mr. O'Keefe,
Lieutenant, do you not testify very often?
Yes, he was.
what kind of position was his body in when you first observed?
He was lying supine on the ground, like on his back.
When the judge said move
He
this
was
along, she meant
parallel
this
to the
too.
street, about 8 feet away from the
Oh
snowbank.
no.
And in reference
This is
to
not
that, as far
a
as snow
thin
is concerned,
slice. What
if
is
anything, what if any snow did you observe on or around where
He was covered with snow, and there was snow around the area.
And so from a treatment of Mr. O'Keefe as a patient.
This jury has to be like, seriously, can we just go to lunch?
Did or
We started CPR, or CCR, sorry, immediately. Someone went to go get a board to get him onto that so we can get him onto the stretcher and move him to the ambulance. And then someone else is trying to get the backstory, trying to figure out the scenario that we're dealing with.
if I could just stop you for a moment. So
Yep.
you mentioned CCR, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the difference between CCR versus CPR?
CPR is cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So that is when you're helping someone breathe. CCR is when we first get to a scene. They changed the protocols a little while ago, so we don't have to give respirations right away. We can just do compressions. It's a little more effective to get the blood flowing quickly.
Thank you. So as far as your involvement in patient care, sort of what
Yeah.
was that during that initial phase where Mr. O'Keefe was supine on the ground? What was your involvement in patient care at that point?
I was assisting with the CPR, making sure everyone else was doing their task. As a lieutenant, I kind of got to manage the other people and make sure everyone's on target for what they're supposed to be doing.
And
He's like, I'm management.
during that initial time that you're outside
That was my computer, sorry.
in the area where Mr. O'Keefe is on the ground, what, if any, observations did you make as far as injuries to Mr. O'Keefe at that time?
Outside on the ground, he was covered in snow. So we're really not doing any sort of secondary survey initially. The primary concern is the primary survey, which is airway, breathing, circulation. He was not breathing. He had no pulse. So our primary concern is to get that going.
They don't need this testimony. They don't need any of this. They had the person who did CPR testify. They don't need.
Are you able to get him?
They don't need the lieutenant who watched the person do CPR testify. Like they.
From the ground to the back of the ambulance?
Yeah, we moved him onto a longboard, then moved him from the longboard onto the stretcher.
Sorry
and
for all of
above
you
the
who
stretcher
thought you had a
with the ambulance and
meeting
loaded him
because
there.
of my notifications. I apologize.
At some point,
Just silence them.
upon your sort of initial arrival at the patient,
Sort of.
different people were tasked with different things. Right?
Yes.
And someone was tasked with trying to get sort of what you termed a backstory. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why,
Yeah.
why is that important?
So when you have someone unconscious, unresponsive, you want to know when they were last well, the last breathing, last seen, trying to figure out why someone is on the ground. There are different reasons of why they could be there, trying to figure that out. Normally people don't lay down in the snow. So trying to evaluate the reason the person was unconscious.
Fair.
And so you're able to get him on, Mr. O'Keefe, onto a stretcher into the back of the ambulance, correct?
Even
Yes.
the prosecutor sounds bored with his
The
questions.
lighting in the back of the ambulance is better than it was.
So don't ask them.
Correct.
And when you're in the back of the ambulance,
The prosecutor could skip
are you
to the testimony that matters for this witness and has chosen not to do so.
you were participating
And for
in
that,
secondary
I am
survey?
annoyed.
Yeah. We started doing a secondary survey after we started getting good compressions going. Someone was working on the intubation. And then one of the procedures is to strip off the clothes and evaluate the person.
And if you recall, how were the clothes removed?
I don't recall exactly
Snarky
which
Puggle
which
vibe. If he
method
wrote the
they
report,
used.
they could skip to
Typically, we
that.
cut them off, but I'm not sure if they did that or they just pulled them off.
They could just skip to that.
And what, if anything, do you recall as to Mr. O'Keefe's clothing and sort of what he was wearing when he was found?
I really wasn't paying attention to it. The primary concern is trying to revive him.
So to that secondary survey, as far
Mm-hmm.
as once you're in the back of the ambulance, what, if anything, did you observe as far as injuries on Mr. O'Keefe at that?
He had a hematoma or a bruising. The right eye was very prominent. There was some scratches on the right forearm.
Were they furrows?
Was most of the external injuries we noted.
Is he saying anything
So as far as people on scene, there were
in
a number of
addition?
different firefighters from your
Yes.
department. And you mentioned that the police were on scene when you arrived. Is that correct?
Correct.
So beyond the police and fire, what, if any, other individuals did you observe at some point when you were on scene?
There was some other civilians there. I
What, if
really
any,
wasn't
relevance
paying
does-
attention to them?
This have beyond being cumulative at this point. And the defense is not going to object to cumulative because if the prosecution bores the shit out of the jury, it's not the defense's problem.
Either outside of the ambulance,
The judge The judge objected, and he still hasn't moved along.
Asked by you or anyone else to try and obtain that back.
I think Katie McLaughlin was the one that obtained the backstory.
And if you know, was there any other conversation that you were present for between any of your other firefighters and any of those civilians?
That was primarily when she relayed to us the information that she had obtained. We were trying to figure out the scenario of why he was
This matters.
found unconscious, unresponsive.
Let me ask you this way. So as far as arrival at the patient when he's on the ground,
Yep.
who gets there first?
Why are you going back in time? You just asked him for the pass-off report from Katie McLaughlin. Why don't we find out what that is? Instead of going back to, okay, so when you first arrived at the patient, what are we doing?
You and the other individuals in the engine or the firefighters in the engine?
We both respond from the same station at the same time. The engine's in the front, the ambulance usually in the rear. So I believe we pulled over, the ambulance pulled over at the same time as us. I believe C5 went as well, which is the captain. He was also responding with us.
Now, as far as the person that Firefighter McLaughlin spoke to, what, if anything, did you know about that person at that time?
At that time, I knew nothing. I knew there was someone that had been with him. She relayed the information of what she had heard to us.
And the information that Firefighter McLaughlin, without reference to what it was, but the information that Firefighter McLaughlin was able to obtain, did she communicate that to you and the other firefighters in the ambulance?
Yes. Yeah, she came in the ambulance, told us what she had heard.
As far as the information that Firefighter McLaughlin provided, did that comport with what you were observing as far as injuries to Mr. O'Keefe?
Objection.
Sustained. You can lay a foundation if
I don't know why you feel the need to explain to him.
Again, the injuries that you observed to Mr. O'Keefe in the back of the ambulance were what?
It was the bruising of the
way to go
right
about
eye
that, but
and
okay.
scratches on the forearm.
And what, if anything, did Firefighter McLaughlin indicate to you what had been told to her?
That someone said she had hit him, and he was last seen.
Objection. Move to strike.
sustained, that will be stricken.
May we approach on?
Okay.
Why are we approaching? All right. There's more information that was passed along that it sounds like hasn't come out yet, and they're at sidebar about it. And I'm going to zoom while they're at sidebar. I think they're probably going to take the lunch break while this sidebar is going on. So that has to be uncomfortable for everybody sitting in that courtroom. Just tremendously uncomfortable. All right, we're sidebarring. Let me move I can't move my mouse too much. Still sidebarring.
Try and check and make sure that your lunch is here before we take a break. I'm told that it is. So we will take a lunch break.
And now
You'll
we're
see
at lunch.
Everybody here ready to start right at 2 o'clock.
And that's the lunch break. All right, I'm going to switch feeds because I'm hoping that the sound is gained up on the other one. Let's see if it is. Let's see if the sound's any better. If not, I'm going to switch to a different one. So we're going to be just coming in from the lunch break when we return.
Turning attention back
That's
to
better.
The treatment of Mr. O'Keefe.
All right, we are now after the lunch break. Same witness on the
Yes.
stand. Witness
With
10,
respect to that,
the lieutenant that arrived on scene.
you testified that you don't recall sort of specifically anything as far as clothing for Mr. O'Keefe. Is that correct?
I was not paying attention to the clothing.
Sounds a little bit
And
better.
so to that point, what were you paying attention to at that?
Primarily, the big issue was doing the CCR, then to CPR. We're trying to resuscitate the person as best we can. We know with the hypothermic patient, it's very difficult. The longer treatment protocol than a typical cardiac arrest because we have to do the CPR for an extended period of time. We have to get the patient warmed up. So the clothing is just quickly removed versus examined or looked at. And the focus was on getting compressions done.
They're not investigating.
Someone was trying to intubate, getting a line started.
To render
So that's what we're mainly
life-saving
focused on.
measures. They're not investigating.
What if any sort of interplay or intersection is there between a cardiac arrest and a hypothermic patient?
What do you mean?
When someone's hypothermic and in a cardiac arrest, we can't declare them dead or passed on until they've been warmed up. A lot of times with hypothermic patients, they can appear to be dead when they're still actually alive. So there has been instances where people have woken up in morgues that were hypothermic when their body warmed up a little bit. So we have to be very cautious, very careful about, treating them as much as we can, as careful as we can. We can't shake them too much, can't move them too much. So it's getting the blood circulating and then starting ventilating after a few minutes.
That's the first time they asked.
CPR, the chest compression
Yep.
that we're talking about. What, if any, sort of, based on your training and experience, what, if any, sort of protocols are? Well, let me ask you this. Were you doing chest compressions throughout the entirety of this interaction with the patient?
No, chest compressions, most people do it for about 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, it's very tiring to do chest compressions, so we swap off every few minutes. So a different person will come in and do the compressions. They'll do it for a little while, go into a different task. Someone else will come in and do compressions.
Is that sort of the protocol that you followed in this instance? With
Yes.
regard to the stroke?
Yes, we were rotating the person doing compressions.
And the ambulance at some point leaves the scene and goes to a hospital. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you know what hospital, Mr.
Good Samaritan Medical Center.
If you could just wait till
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
questions.
He's like, I just want to be done.
Good Samaritan Medical Center.
And did you go along for that ambulance ride?
No, I did not.
And where did you go?
So as
Back to the
the
truck?
lieutenant on the engine, I stay with the engine. I detailed my 2 other engine personnel to the ambulance. So they went with the 2 engine personnel, the 2 regular people on the ambulance, as well as an additional person. Timmy Nuttall was the extra person for that one.
And so you take the engine and go with it.
I went back to the station.
And at some point shortly after that, are you called back to the roadway of Fairview Road?
Yes.
And same general area?
Why?
Fairview Road?
Yes, same address.
And how is it that you get from the station back?
Why?
To
So we had struck a box to cover the personnel that we had detailed. That means we send out a page looking for additional people to come in. We had Sam Pock come in. So he was my engine driver, and I was in the lieutenant's seat. We responded back in engine 4.
And the ambulance that had been there on Fairview Road with you previously was at Good Samaritan.
Yes. Yeah. A call like that takes an extended period of time, even at the hospital, to assist them there. So we had to get an ambulance from Station 2.
Oh, so we're finally at the point of his testimony. Good. We're finally at the point of why he's here for what happened after the other ambulance, not other ambulance because he's in the fire truck. After the ambulance went to the hospital with the victim, he gets called back to the scene. This is actually new.
And
if
you know who was on that ambulance from Station
2? That was Jason Becker and Dan Whitley.
I bet we're going to hear from both of them.
With reference to this particular call, what, if anything, was this secondary dispatch with regard to?
So this call was for Section 12, which is someone in having a psychological issue.
And do you know who that Section 12 was in regard to?
Yeah, this was for Karen Reed.
And at some point, you go back to the scene along with the engine and the second ambulance from Station 2?
Yeah, so the engine got there first. The ambulance coming from the other station, so it was a couple extra minutes before they got there.
And when you arrived, who, if anyone else, is sort of on scene on Fairview Road?
The police were still on scene. They had never left. So initially it was me, Sam Pock, and the police. So I went up to try to get the backstory of why we're doing a Section 12 and what was going on.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
And at some point, well,
He's like, excuse me, what?
Without regard to what was said to you, but who, if anyone, do you speak with to sort of try to gain this information about?
What, if any, does not need the cousin? Who, if anyone? That. Stop it.
When I got onto the scene, I talked to the police that was there.
Who'd you talk to, sir? The police officer who was
Police
there?
officer, yes. Sorry.
And do you recall specifically who that police officer was?
I really did not pay attention to the individual officer.
That's a nope.
And at some point, do you have a conversation, or what, if any, conversations do you have with the patient in this case, the defendant, Ms. Reed?
So it was when we identified Karen Reed as the patient, the ambulance arrived shortly after. We started talking to her and trying to get her into the ambulance to talk to her further.
And just to be clear for the records,
Who did you talk to when you arrived?
when you say Ms. Reed, do you see
That's it.
her in the courtroom today?
All you
Yes,
need.
she's right over there.
All you need.
Does the record reflect identification of the defendant by the witness?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, with respect to the defendant, Ms. Reed, where is she sort of when you first make contact with her on scene when you come back?
In the general vicinity of where the police cars are.
And what is sort of the purpose of this initial conversation that you're having with Ms. Reed?
For
not what
Section
is-
12, that's when someone...
Not what is sort of the purpose. Why?
Someone's made threats to them, harm themselves or others. So I just had to judge her mental ability at the time and if she was a threat to us and how much of a threat she was to herself. So just a quick evaluation, see how her behavior was.
And what, if any, observations did you make of her during your quick conversation?
She appeared very distraught, very upset. Initially just trying to explain the situation to her about going to the hospital with the Section 12, and she was resistant to that.
I can imagine why.
And so when you say she was resistant to that, what if anything, did she say or do to?
She did not want to go.
Hold on. You cannot talk over each other.
The prosecutor's questions are so wandering that he's just trying to answer. I know it's hard for the court reporter, but don't look at this witness. Look at the person questioning them.
The objection's overruled.
Yeah. Okay.
Please go ahead.
So what was the question again, please?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what, if anything, when you say she was resistant, what, if anything, did she communicate to you or observations did you make in regard to that?
Why? Just ask why.
She
Why?
did not want to go to the hospital,
Why?
and she didn't think she needed any assistance.
And what, if anything, are you sort of, you mentioned you were explaining sort of the process to her. What, if anything, are you saying in that explanation?
Well, once a Section 12 gets written, it's written by the police. Once it's written, we are required to transport to the hospital. Section 12 means that they believe you're a threat to yourself or others. So you have to get evaluated at the hospital.
Who determined
by,
that?
The hospital staff there.
So they're
to see how
required to
mentally
take her.
stable you are.
Now, at this time of this conversation, what, if anything, did you know as far as?
I'm interested to see which law enforcement officer decided this and how, because the evidence that we have so far is that the women that arrived on scene with defendant, we don't have everybody's name in evidence clearly yet through witnesses, but the women that arrived on scene took the defendant and then somehow they end up back on scene and somehow law enforcement determines that she, Karen Reed, must be taken to the hospital. Those dots have not been, I's have not been dotted, T's have not been crossed. But who made that determination?
There's a relationship between Ms. Reed and the prior patient, Mr. O'Keefe.
I knew they had a relationship. I wasn't sure if they were married or engaged or what their status was, but I knew she was did have a strong relationship with him.
And in reference to Mr. O'Keefe, during your conversation with Ms. Reed, what, if anything, was she asking or saying in reference to Mr. O'Keefe?
She kept repeating, is he dead? Is he dead? She seemed very concerned about that. We're trying to explain to her that we cannot declare him dead. He's being evaluated. He's being treated. They're trying to treat him the best they can.
And as far as when she's stating these things to you, is this, as far as the sort of tonality of her voice while she's saying these things to you, can you describe that?
She was very up and down. It was a repetitive conversation with her.
Like she was distraught?
She's obviously experiencing a lot of different emotions. So just her emotional state was all over the place.
And as far as this sort of second time that you're on scene, about how long period of time are we talking about?
That was about between 15 and 20 minutes.
And as far as your conversation with Miss Reed, where did she go? Did you stay with her sort of the entire time that she was on scene that second time? Or
Because she was resistant, we were trying to get her to voluntarily go. If someone voluntarily goes, even with the section written, they're released a lot quicker. So we're trying to convince her to go, be willing to go with us versus being forced. If at some point we have to actually force her to go against her will, then it's going to be a much longer hospital stay. So our main goal with staying on the scene so long was to try to get her willingly to go. Just makes her experience much better.
And just to be clear, when you say we, who specifically are you?
It was me, Dan Whitley, Jason Becker were the ones talking to her in the back of the ambulance.
When you clear, sort of when you leave the scene, where is Miss Reed at that point?
So the ambulance transported her to the Good Samaritan. We also detailed Sam Pock as the driver.
So the gentleman who had driven, or the firefighter that had driven you in the engine to the scene that
Yep.
drives the ambulance away.
Yes, correct.
Could you say his name again, please?
Sam Pock.
Sam what?
Sam Pock.
Spell
The
it,
judge
please?
cannot hear this
POCH is
witness.
the last
Oh,
name.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have no further questions.
Okay. Ready?
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Just keep in mind, this fire lieutenant did not make the decision to put a hold on Karen Reed. Law enforcement made that decision. I don't know why law enforcement made that decision after Karen Reed left the scene. We're all going to find out together. Some of you might know that information. The jury and the alternate jury of the law nerds do not know. So we're going to have to wait till that comes in and answer that question. But I'm real curious. All right, on to cross-examination.
Mr. Woodbury, you and I have never met or spoken, correct?
No.
I know you had said you were nervous, so I'm going to try and make this fairly brief.
Thank you.
Sir. I just have a couple of areas that I'd like to go
Okay.
through with. So to your interaction with Karen Reed and what you actually heard from her mouth.
Okay.
That's sort of where I want to concentrate, as opposed to anything that anybody else may have said to you about what they believe she might have said. Okay?
Okay.
And it seems to me that your main interaction with her was not when the initial call came in to respond to, a man who was unresponsive in the snow. It was after you went back to the station in the engine and then came back to the scene for the purposes of the Section 12 that you described. Would that be fair to say?
Correct.
And when you came back to the scene for the Section 12, it's also fair to say that the Section 12 issue was your focus, correct?
Correct.
You had an order in hand, correct?
The police had it and they gave it to us when we got there.
Right. Okay. So you got an order in hand once you got there.
Correct.
Which is what you expected to happen, correct?
Yes.
And your focus at that point is, okay, and I don't want to be too, flip, but we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Is that a fair characterization?
Yep. That is one way to put it.
And you wanted to do it the easy way.
Yes, correct.
And you wanted to persuade Karen Reed that she should want to do it the easy way, correct?
Yes.
And after some conversation back and forth where she was initially resistant, she eventually agreed, yes, I'll do, not to put words in your mouth or hers, but to the effect of, yes, we'll do this the easy way.
She acquiesced.
Get her to agree to transport.
And
she said,
with
fine, I'll go to
regard
the hospital.
To her state of mind, I believe you had testified that she appeared to be very distraught.
Yes, correct.
Going through a lot of emotions.
I would just like to pause him and note real quick. Did you see when the defense attorney reoriented this witness, that the witness kind of calmed down in the way he's testifying? So he had said he's nervous, and the defense attorney's like, I'm just going to ask you about this. And it's like everybody kind of takes a breath, and then they have a much easier colloquy, and this witness is much more comfortable. That is a skill not all attorneys have, but this attorney is particularly good at it. The way Yannetti goes about questioning is different than the way Jackson goes about questioning. But I wonder if the jury also palpably feels okay, we're oriented here and we're talking about this, but it also lets the jury know. Aren't you just like, oh yeah, that's what we're focusing on. It just reorients everybody to where we're at and makes them very easy to follow.
Yes.
Grief-stricken,
Oh, that's one of them. Yes.
hysterical at times,
Yes.
raising her voice at times,
Yes.
crying at times.
I didn't see any actual tears, but
That
yeah,
type
type of emotional display.
All right. And so in terms of the only commentary that you heard with regard to her feelings or questions regarding John O'Keefe, it was the statements that you heard repetitively over and over and over again. Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead?
That was some of the things she was saying, yes.
Only some?
Your Honor, may we approach sidebar briefly?
Okay. We're going to find out what that's about, but also I'm going to zoom. I'm going to zoom for it because they are back at sidebar. I wonder what's coming up. The defense has been, and the prosecution too, has been very good about going to sidebar if there's an area they think that will be objectionable and heading it off at the pass. I think it will keep the judge from getting upset with them, and it will move everything along much more smoothly. But the pacing of Yannetti's cross is a little different than the way Jackson paces his cross. So it's interesting to see the differences. Let's see. Well, nope. Still back at sidebar. There we go.
So I
Lieutenant Woodbury.
think, Mr. Yannetti, I think you need the actual.
Yes.
Exhibit?
I was going to ask a couple of questions first and then grab it.
But it's right there for when you need it.
Lieutenant Woodbury, on your direct examination, you testified a bit, and I don't want to block a jury here. I'm sorry. You testified a bit.
He was starting to wander.
About the injuries that you observed on John O'Keefe when you first arrived at the scene, correct?
Yes.
You testified about the swollen eye,
Yes.
and you also testified about the scratch marks that you saw on his forearm, correct?
Correct.
I'd like to show you, I'm going to approach it.
They're probably trying to clarify forearm or upper arm.
M for identification. And when I hand it to you, please keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
And look at it, and then look up at me when you're done. Okay.
So the scratches, everybody else had talked about the scratches being on the upper arm, not being on the forearm. So
Having reviewed M for identification, do you recognize what that depicts?
Yes.
What does it depict?
That is Mr. O'Keefe's right arm.
All right. Does that photograph appear to be a fair and accurate?
I just want to clarify real quick because Kathy asked the question. So the jury is behind Karen, no, but the jury goes all the way to like the corner. So if he was moving over to the corner, it would block the jury. It's the opposite of what you see on the other side.
Accurate representation of the scratch marks that you observed on January 29th of 2022, sir?
Yes.
I would offer that, Your Honor.
Okay.
So they're going to put
That will
photos
be
of
our
the
next
scratch
exhibit,
marks.
and again, we'll have to maybe renumber.
And then they
Counsel,
will
before
publish
you
that
leave
for the
today,
jury.
we
So
have
there's
to
going to
figure out
be
how to
there's going to be
keep
photos.
everything
The photo of the
straight.
scratch, the photo of the marks on the arm are going to be shown because they're going to publish that to the jury, which means everyone will see them.
And with
So.
the court's permission, Your Honor, may I have that published on the screen for the jury?
Yes.
Which again, so those are going to be published, and that's going to be the victim's arm, I imagine,
On direct
only.
examination, Lieutenant.
Yeah.
Hang on. Let me just have a moment.
There are going to be photos in this case.
Good point.
So you guys are going to see photos in this case,
I'm going to try to.
but the photos of the arm are pretty critical to the case.
With regard to the injuries that you described on direct examination.
These would be photos from the autopsy.
Mainly concentrated.
I'm sorry, I need to.
She's like, I need to see you guys at sidebar. I was talking over his question too, so I'm going to back up and see what the question is.
Examination, Lieutenant, hang on. Let me just have a moment.
This is the first time the jury is seeing these injuries to the victim.
I'm going to try to get out of your way so everybody can see. With regard to the injuries that you described on direct examination, Lieutenant, I believe you would mainly concentrate.
I'm sorry, I need to. Please take this down for me. I need to counsel myself.
I don't know if the judge doesn't want that published, though those photos I know have come up in other court hearings. So I'm not sure what the court is worried about. But the court has called everybody back to sidebar and asked that the photo be taken down off the screen, which is appropriate when they go to sidebar. So for all of you asking what those are from, isn't that the heart of the questions at this case? That is one of the core differences between the prosecution theory of the case and the defense theory of the case. So for those of you who have not seen those photos before, like the jury has not, the questions that you're questioning are probably what the jury is also questioning. Like, I'm sorry, what? This is why they were asking if the clothing was damaged on the outside and whether they saw any clothing damage. If these were caused by a car outside while he's in the clothing, wouldn't the clothing be damaged? So the audio is still not back yet. I'm sad that they're just focusing on the victims' family members. Can we just see what the lawyers are doing? Just like zoom out and see. Zoom out, and let us see what's going on in court. So, are they going to a break that we didn't hear about? I will also note for the chat, you guys, there are going to be multiple pathologists presented in this case who are going to opine, I would suspect, differently about the source of the injuries and the likely cause of the injuries. So while, chat, I don't mind if you opine, I am not going to investigate the source of them because we're going to have to wait and see what the jury thinks. In opening, we heard from the defense that the defense said that those were animal marks. We heard the prosecution say that he was hit by a car. So, but are the clothes damaged? Because right now the evidence is that the clothes have not been damaged. That's the evidence in so far. Let's see. I'm going to try to scrub forward just a little bit because they are just panning around the courtroom and panning to the defendant while the attorneys were at sidebar instead of continuing to slowly. So the attorneys look like they are conferring before we resume. I don't know if they had the jury step out. I'm guessing that they did because everyone is standing the way you would stand when you
bring the jury.
So it seems like they had the jury leave while they were having that conversation. And now the jury is back. It's really frustrating when they don't say that they're taking a break.
So jurors, I can assure you that by Monday, I mean, we're in really good shape. It's an organizational situation that I have to deal with. So we've been dealing with that. We appreciate your patience and we are in good shape. And Ms. Dianetti, if you need the exhibit, it's here.
Terrific. May I have it published again on the camera?
Yes.
So the photo will be put back up on the screen, so you will see it.
With regard to the injuries that you observed, did you notice any lividity on the body when you were looking at Mallory?
Being hypothermic, he was very pale overall. So the skin wasn't pinked up yet. So it's hard to really judge the rest of the skin that way until it's warmed up and much later into the scene.
You are familiar with the term lividity, though?
Yes.
Could you just explain that to the jury?
That's like bruising. So the pooling of blood in lower sections, So for like a cardiac arrest patient, when they have lividity, it looks like bruising on the underside where all the blood has pooled. And we did not really notice that.
But it's not actually bruising from an injury. It's just the blood being
Settling down. It's the same thing, yes.
One at a time, please.
Yeah, sorry. It appears like bruising.
It looks like bruising.
And bruising is basically pooling of blood under the skin. So this is lividity is just gravity-fed pooling of blood under the skin. And it usually happens what is the section of the body that is lowest.
I see. Okay. Now, with regard to the scratches that you've testified about and that you now observe on Exhibit 382, I believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your testimony on direct examination was that you observed them in the forearm area, correct?
It was the right, like forearm to arm. I was trying to signal like right up here, but yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I guess that's my.
Yeah.
It wasn't just on the.
Not just, it was the arm area. You know, mostly what I noticed was forearm, but there was some around there.
Does what you see look consistent with that picture?
It wasn't up just below the elbow.
There was some above the elbow as well?
Yep.
That's consistent with Exhibit 382?
Correct.
That's the question I was waiting for.
Yes.
Consistent with the photos, consistent with what he saw.
Questions?
No,
Mr.
and
Lally,
that's the end of
anything
cross.
further?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Lieutenant, thank you very much. So you're all set.
It's important, I think, that they show the picture at this point. At some point, you have
next
to establish what the scratches look like, because there's a whole lot of variety of what scratches might mean in somebody's mind. I have scratched myself with my nails on my face. It does not look like the scratches on this victim's arm. So I think it's important to show the jury now as we continue having this conversation about
Mr. Lally.
scratches on the arms.
Commonwealth would call Mr. Daniel Whitley to the stand.
What, if any, fire personnel is left? So seeing the photos is a little bit different than just hearing about scratches, isn't it? So no, I'm not going to. I saw somebody saying you can Google animal scratches. I'm not going to. The lawyers need to prove to me what happened or not. It looks like there were puncture wounds too. To me. I did say what if any.
Good afternoon, sir.
It's contagious.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Daniel Whitley, Whitley.
And what do you do for us, sir?
I'm a paramedic firefighter with the Town of Canton Fire Department.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton Fire?
I was hired in March of 2006.
If the judge tells him to speed it up, I'm going to be cheering.
Prior to that, work with the
This is
Canton
witness
Fire
11.
Department, did you work within that same field in any other capacity for any other company?
Yes, correct. I worked for American Medical Response out of Brockton as an EMT intermediate and a paramedic for 5 years.
And you're a certified paramedic, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that certification current?
Held that certification?
It was, I believe, November of 2006 that I got that certification.
And is it current?
And is there any sort of continuing educational component or recertification?
Damn it, Lally, we know. Just ask him if it's current.
Yes, we recertify every 2 years. We're required to hold basic life support card, which is just generally CPR, and advanced cardiac life support, which is ACLS. It's more dealing with EKGs and how to run resuscitations, cardiac arrests, things of that nature.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention to January 28th into January 29th of 2022, were you working with the Canton Fire Department on those dates?
Yes.
What kind of shift were you?
He moved a little faster.
24-hour shift, 8 a.m. to 8 a.m.
He moved a little faster. He moved a little
And,
faster.
Where were you assigned on that particular date?
The Ponkbog Station, Station 2.
The Ponkabog Station, where is that located within Canton?
The north side of town on Southmont Street.
And how were you assigned to a specific duty or a specific?
No, you were good with
I
how.
was assigned to Ambulance 2 with
You were fine with how were you assigned?
Jason Becker.
Just leave it there.
I was a field training officer at that point, and he was just finishing up his field training after he recently became certified as a paramedic.
And now, at some point shortly after 6 a.m., were you aware of a call or dispatch in regard to Station House 1?
Yes, we had just returned from a previous call about 5 a.m.
Right to the call. Right to the call.
Heard the tones go off. Actually, we were in the day room, which is where basically it's the living room of a fire station. And we heard the tones go off. We heard the police going to Fairview Road. And we just kind of sat and were wondering what was going on there.
Now, you yourself, you and firefighter Becker, were you dispatched to a call as well, approximately 6:41 or 6:42 a.m.?
Yes.
Do you think when the judge is just swinging around in her chair, the jury thinks she's bored?
What, if anything, were you aware of with regard to the prior call that the other ambulance went?
Because they can see her more than we can.
So when the tones go off between the two stations, we're able to hear what the dispatch complaint is, what they're going for, and it came in as, I believe, CPR in progress in the snow or something to that regard. So we knew that was a fairly serious call that Station 1 had gone to.
Now, when you received your dispatch at approximately 6:42 a.m. or so, what was that call in regard to, and where did you respond?
We were dispatched for a Section 12.
And
look, we're getting right to why they're rolling out. That's so helpful.
Your assignments within the ambulance between yourself and firefighter Becker, with regard to this call, who was doing what?
I was driving. He's what we call the tech, the lead paramedic on the case. That's just generally how we operate.
And from your response, or your driving from Station 2 to Fairview Road, what, if anything, did you observe or experience en route in between the two?
At that point, it was snowing pretty heavily.
It was snowing.
We're coming down Chapman Street, getting ready to take the right onto Fairview. We nearly slid off the road, making the turn onto Fairview. It was snowing that heavily, and I don't believe the roads had been really plowed or treated or anything like that for us to. So it was pretty slippery.
Now, in addition to ambulance number 2 that you and firefighter Becker were in, what, if any, other sort of vehicles or apparatus was dispatched to this?
I'm just going to make a note of something I've observed. When they have given the routes that the different ambulances and apparatus have taken, there was a report from, this was from opening, there was a report from Proctor that said the roads hadn't been plowed. When we see the photos and the dash cam videos, it looks like it's been plowed. He's saying the route that they came was not plowed. So it will be interesting to see if those routes are different and some of the road had been plowed and some of the road hadn't been plowed. And that's where the inconsistency is on that, or not. But he was saying that the roads they were on at the time of the Section 12 had not been plowed. But we've seen the dash cam video of the road where the incident was, and that had been plowed. I don't know if it'll matter in the end.
Which is the District 1 engine,
but
and at least 2 police cruisers, and then another gray SUV, kind of further down from where we parked.
Now, when you arrive in this area on Fairview Road, what, if anything, do you sort of observe as far as who's there when you arrive?
When I got out, my Lieutenant Woodbury and Sam Park were there.
And they were on the engine, is that correct?
They were on the engine, correct.
Now, beyond sort of the personnel from your department, you mentioned that there were some police officers there as well?
Yes, Melanie and Sarah, and then 2 other females, at least 2 other females.
And the other 2 females, where were they when you first sort of get out?
Those would be the civilians and or Karen
A few yards ahead of us, a few dozen yards ahead of us, I'd say.
And were there any other vehicles beyond sort of first responders that you observed on?
Just that other gray SUV.
And so I guess my question is, where were the 2 females that you observed in relation to the gray SUV?
Near it, maybe in front of, maybe one was inside. There were 3 females there.
And at some point while you're on scene, you learned the identity of your patient, correct?
Yes.
And who was the What was the name of the patient?
Karen Reed.
And you had some conversation with Karen Reed that day, is that correct?
Yes,
And do you see Karen Reed in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you just describe as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
She's seated right at that table right there.
I'm sorry, if you could just point as to where she's seated.
Right here.
No, I just asked record reflect identification.
Okay.
Now, when you first sort of arrive on scene, who, if anyone, is the first person that you talked to?
Lieutenant Woodbury and Sam Pock.
Yes, chat. He can just say, who did you talk to? Why he's choosing not to do that, I don't know. He could just say, when you arrived on scene, who did you talk to?
And following that conversation, who, if anyone, you speak to?
I'm 8 weeks. 8
Probably
weeks,
briefly
chat.
Lieutenant Mullaney, but more, I'm sorry, not Lieutenant, Officer Mullaney and Officer Saraf.
Now, following your conversation, well, let me ask you this sort of in general terms. When you respond to a call for a Section 12, what is sort of the protocol that you go through in regard to that?
Whether it's a Section 12
I
or
might name the pickle
any call,
sort of a
basically,
pickle.
the lead tech generally takes over immediate patient care, goes over, assesses. Usually the partner will go over and try and find out background details, try and find not only, well, especially for a Section 12, you want to get, the tech will get, which is Jason's role, the patient story, and then I'll get everyone else's story.
And at some point, you have a conversation with Ms. Reed as well.
Oh, yes.
And where is that in relation to vehicles on scene? So where
Were you standing?
The initial conversation, she was very upset. She kept saying,
No. He asked, where were you standing? Not what did she say.
We had a Section 12 written.
But he said so many other things. Of course,
that was to take her to the hospital because she made threats against her life, saying, I don't want to live anymore. If my husband dies, I don't want to be alive anymore. And myself and Jason and Lieutenant Woodbury were kind of like, well, that's seemingly more in the lines of normal grieving process after something traumatic happens to a loved one, whether they're going to die or not. The
Section 12 seems like a lot.
We kind of didn't feel like it kind of led to that level of a Section 12 to have her transported to the hospital.
I want all of the cross-examination to be about that. Fire and law enforcement don't always see things the same way. I want to hear all of the cross-examination about that. We didn't really think that it was at that level. Yeah, it seems real excessive when someone is distraught to put a Section 12 on them, which I have thoughts, but I'm going to need more witnesses.
So at that point, I exited the ambulance and I went to speak with Officer Saraf. And I said, this kind of doesn't, if we want her to be at the hospital, get a full eval, we're going to need more than just, if my husband dies, I want to die, because that seems just like normal grieving things to say.
And I don't know, did she say husband or boyfriend? He remembers husband.
I don't know where he went. I don't know whether it was cruiser or what. But he came back, notified me that her...
Sustained.
And from that conversation, did you receive more information or more clarity?
That's hearsay.
Yes,
or going to be.
Officer Saraf had said that.
Objection.
So not
Hearsay.
what he said, sir. So
we were informed that.
Objection. I'm not sure.
So you can't testify to what somebody else told you.
I mean, he can if the prosecutor says that this is informing what he does next. He can't offer it for the truth of the matter asserted. I don't think they're trying to offer it for the truth of the matter asserted. I think the prosecutor is trying to say, why did you do what you did? And can you explain why you acted the way you did? Well, law enforcement told us this. But the prosecutor has not clarified that. And I have no idea who's pushing buttons on the phone. It's not me. Today is chaos.
You can when there's no objection regarding what Ms. Reed told you,
Okay.
but you can't testify what anybody else
Actually,
told you.
he can.
So when I say sustain, that means you have to stop.
But there's an objection.
Okay.
And
There's an
the
exception.
lawyer will ask another question, okay?
There's an exception, though, to explain his action.
Firefighter Whitley, at some point,
Because I really want to know why law enforcement made that determination.
You described sort of her demeanor and the observations you made in relation to that as you were speaking.
Yes, she was very upset. She kept asking if there was any chance. She kept asking us if we knew if the person in ambulance one had transported was alive or dead, and we could not speak to that. She asked if somebody could be alive in the snow without a jacket for many hours. And at that point, we were just trying to give her any hope that
many hours,
whomever A1 transported was still alive. And we kind of just talked about far off hypothermia cases where, kids have fallen in rivers and been submerged for many minutes, maybe even hours, and survived with no neurological deficits. So we were just trying to give her some sort of hope on the way to the hospital that there was a chance that her husband could be alive.
Now, at this point, what, if anything, did you know about sort of the relationship between your patient, the defendant, Ms. Reed?
And y'all, for those of you in the chat asking about how they can testify in court to what was going on with her medically, they can testify in court to what was going on with her medically. It is a court proceeding.
And the patient from ambulance 1 that was transported previously?
She identified him as her husband.
And is that something that you said once or more than once?
Many, many times.
Now, she asked you some questions about his status and made specific reference to his clothes. Is that correct?
Yes.
The only thing I recall is
can he survive without a coat?
Asking if he could have survived without a jacket.
I've got questions about that too. Molly?
Now, as far as these conversations that you had with Ms.
Which is
Reed,
consistent
where did
with her dropping him
occur
off.
in relation to the ambulance?
And knowing he didn't.
They were in the back of the ambulance.
And who, if anyone, was present in the back of the ambulance beyond yourself and the defendant?
Jason Becker.
And
what happened next?
With reference to, you mentioned that firefighter Becker was sort of the lead paramedic or the lead tech on this. Is that correct?
Yes.
So is there, from sort of his role and your role, what are some of the sort of differences in the duties and responsibilities in relation, we'll call it?
So for any Section 12 or our department policy is there will be 2 EMTs, paramedics, firefighters with during transport at all times. That's both for our safety and the patient safety. So that's why it wasn't just 2 EMTs or paramedics driving to the hospital. I was in back with Jason, and Sam Park was driving.
Now, as far as
that's a protocol we hadn't heard about yet.
Observations of her being upset or distraught, is that correct?
Correct.
Was that consistent throughout your interaction with her, or?
No. There would be episodes where she would go from crying in her hands to all of a sudden perking up. She was crying about having to take care of kids, saying she couldn't do it. And I was saying, you can do this. It's not as hard as it seems. She kept saying, I can't take care of these kids. They're not my kids, and they're not his kids. That's when I figured out who ambulance 1 transported. And I was saying, well, it seems like you have a good, strong support system. People who came and helped you in a blizzard to help come find your husband. She said, she asked me if I knew Kerry Roberts. I said I did. She said anybody who knows Carrie Roberts wouldn't say those things. And that kind of took me aback a bit.
Oh.
It seemed strange to say something like that after you were just crying because your husband was dead.
Take you back just within.
I was just kind of surprised.
Carrie Roberts is one of the women that was on scene.
You had testified that during that description, you sort of realized who was a patient in ambulance 1. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what, if anything, made you realize, or who did you think it was?
I live in and grew up in the Ponquag neighborhood of Canton, and Mr. O'Keefe was known for taking on his niece and nephew after
the whole community.
I'm not sure positive of the relationship, but
after his sister
I believe
died.
it was his sister, and his brother-in-law passed away, and it was something people admired him for. People looked up to him for.
Yeah.
But I was able to. I also I moved into the Ponquag neighborhood back after living outside of Canton for a few years. The O'Keefes lived diagonally across from me. I never had any sort of interaction with him or anything. When I moved in, my wife was probably about 6 months pregnant, and I had 2 toddlers, so I was pretty busy. I figured he was pretty busy.
Yeah.
I never even had a chance to introduce myself or anything before he moved to Meadows, which is how I kind of figured out.
Your Honor, I object to this line of questioning.
Okay, next, sustain. Next question.
Now,
Defense, the chat objects to that objection. The defense, we understand your objection, but we object because we actually were finally starting to get some information that was helpful.
you had also mentioned during your conversation with the defendant that she had said some things about Carrie Roberts, correct?
Correct.
The chat wants to know.
And how is it that you know Carrie Roberts?
Well, Carrie lives around the corner from me.
Objection.
No, I'll allow that. Next question, please.
Because it came up.
How long have you known Carrie Roberts?
Just from moving back into the neighborhood, she would run the neighborhood block party, and she put out that she would like the fire truck there on the neighborhood Facebook page. So I volunteered to bring the fire truck to the neighborhood block party.
That's very sweet.
Was Ms. Roberts on scene on Fairview when you arrived in your ambulance?
Yes.
So she was one of the other females along with the defendant?
Correct.
Now, with reference to when you brought up as far as support system, and included Ms. Roberts within that, what, if anything, did the defendant say about Ms. Roberts?
Objection.
Sustained. Next question, please.
It's been asked and answered. I'm surprised. Well, we'll see if they get into it in cross. There's more there that we don't know. And I'm like, but there's more. Now I want to know because there's more there. And if you're the jurors, aren't you just like, tell me the fuck more about this? Finally, something interesting has happened.
With the defendants in the ambulance.
We finally get to not talking about snow. The defense is having a whole powwow with the defendant at their table, and we need to know what is happening.
About how long a period of time are we talking?
20, 25 minutes.
It's a fair bit of time.
And beyond what you've already testified to, what did sort of that conversation consist of, or what was the sort of tone and tenor of that conversation?
Again, we were just trying to give her any support. She was, once we were getting closer to the hospital,
They thought law enforcement was overreacting. Ah, shit.
So the tone and tenor. So what can you tell us about that? That's admissible, Mr. Yannetti. Go ahead.
The tone, she would go from being almost despondent.
They can say what she said.
To when she asked me if I knew Carrie Roberts, the only tone I can use to describe it is snarky.
Objection. Move to strike.
I'll strike that.
Well, shit.
Now, you transported to a Good Samaritan, is that correct?
Correct.
And when you, During the transport, where are you in relation to Miss Reed from Gregory to Good Samaritan?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
During the transport, Miss Reed is where within the ambulance?
I believe we have what we call a tech bench, which is a long bench. There's the ambulance stretcher, and then next to the ambulance stretcher is, we call it the CPR seat, and then that's where Miss Reed sat. And then
no one's focused on this. The jury wants to know what happened with Carrie Roberts.
What we call the airway seat, which is basically like a captain's chair behind the.
Nope, they all want to know. They're stuck on the snarky.
And in addition to yourself and the defendant, who, if anyone else was sort of in the back of the ambulance at that time?
During transport?
Yes.
During transport, it was just me, Jason Becker, and Miss Reed.
So yourself along with firefighter Becker in the back, right?
Correct.
Who was driving the ambulance?
Sam Park.
Now, when you arrived at Good Samaritan, what, if anything, happened?
Miss Reed was asking to be able to see John, and I made the decision that I would run ahead to see if that was in the realm of possibility with the emergency room physician there. So I ran ahead. I came into they call it the code room at Good Sam, and I asked if the wife could see the husband. The ER doctor asked if she would be upset. I said if she would be upset if she was allowed to or not. And I said she's going to be upset. I believe she's going to be upset either way. He was asking if she would get in the way of the resuscitation efforts, and I said it's possible. She's very upset.
You should not see people working on your family members like that. It's so incredibly traumatic.
We escorted her down to we call it the psych hall or the behavioral hall at Good Sam.
And about how long was it after you escorted her into the hospital that you?
Yeah, well, they're running an active code.
At least 10 minutes.
And during those 10 minutes, how would you describe sort of her behavior or demeanor during that time?
Objection.
No, he can testify to that.
He was giving the nurses a hard time about. She was giving the nurses a hard time about having to get into a Johnny, about having to submit a urine sample. Even the AR text went to the physician who was in the code room to see if she could not have to wear a Johnny, and the ER doc said no. If she's in the psych hall, she's a psych patient, needs to be in a Johnny. So
you're gonna ask him
at that
to
point,
explain
there was just a nurse and a tech. We don't usually leave a psych patient with
alone.
Just a single nurse and a tech. So we decided to wait until security had gotten there before we left.
May I have one moment?
Yes.
I'm imagining he means hospital gown, but they didn't clarify that. And it's confusing when the victim's name is also John.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
And it's not going to get clarified.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
They're assuming the jury knows. So they wanted to start admitting her and putting her in a hospital gown and taking urine and the rest of it.
So, Mr. Whitley,
I'd be pissed too.
When you showed up, you learned that Karen Reed was the patient that you were to deal with, correct?
Correct.
And it was your expectation that she would be going to the hospital, correct?
Well, they already Section 12'd her, so yeah.
One of the things that you do when you transport somebody to the hospital is you try to get a medical history, correct?
Yep.
Why is that important?
Generally, we get pertinent medical history to pass on to the hospital.
This is why they didn't define it.
So if something were to happen where the patient wasn't able to describe their past medical history, it gets passed on to the next caregiver, which would be the nurses, doctors at the hospital.
Okay. More information is always better than less information, correct?
I would say so.
And with
Oh,
regard
I moved that
to,
right under me.
Ms. Reed, did you take a medical history from her?
I assume Jason did.
Okay. Did you
So no.
learn the results of that medical history?
You'd have to refer to Jason's report.
No, that's not what he asked.
I may have a moment now.
He said, did you learn the results of that report? And he said you'd have to ask somebody else, but that's not, did you learn? Thank you, everyone local in Massachusetts, for clarifying that everyone refers to the hospital gowns as Johnny's. It's very helpful. This is why you have local juries.
I'm actually going to show you two documents with your permission. One would be
Fred.
Jason's report.
Okay.
And you were talking about Jason Becker, correct?
Correct.
The other is a police report from Sergeant Yuri Buchnick. I'm going to give you the second page of that.
So let's do them one at a time.
Sure. And you've asked for Jason Becker's report, so I'll give you that first, okay?
Okay.
And when I approach you, I'm going to hand this to you, and I just ask you to look at it silently by yourself.
Okay.
And then look up at me when you're done.
Okay.
For all of the European and British folks, yes, I know. Massachusetts, Johnny equals hospital gown. And the reason they didn't clarify it for the jury is because everybody knows it is a local colloquial that everybody's on board with. Much like everyone on the jury being aware of the pig situation going on in South Carolina. So no, Johnny's being hospital gown. He's reviewing his report. Yes, so for the international crew, hospital gown.
I'm going to collect that for you if you don't mind.
The first report was the NFIRS report from my lieutenant.
Was Jason Becker's report included in it
Yes.
as well?
Yep.
Having reviewed those documents, does that refresh your memory as to the medical history that was taken?
Yes.
And what can you tell us about that?
Just lists multiple sclerosis.
What is multiple sclerosis?
I believe it's a neurodegenerative disease where the myelin sheathing of the trying to think of the word here, but
Sir, I'm a paramedic,
No, I understand.
not a neurologist.
I'm sure you do. It's a disease.
it's a disease that's progressive and has neurological muscle control things involved with it.
And when you say progressive, that means it gets worse over time as you age?
As I understand it.
And that was the medical history you got from Karen Lee?
Correct.
I have nothing further.
All right. So, sir, you are all set. Thank you, Mr. Whitley.
So yes,
your next witness, Mr. Lally?
Yes, Your Honor. Call Mr. Jason Becker to the stand.
This is going to be witness number 12. Yes, the defendant has MS. The defense, I'm sure, wanted that information in. So that's why the cross was light on that. They weren't going to get back into the conversation about Carrie Roberts, but they wanted that information in without having the defendant necessarily having to testify. So I'm not surprised that they asked it. And of course, if the jury is sitting there watching the defendant and the way that the defendant interacts or moves or holds herself, they want the jury to know this information, because doesn't it shift things in how you perceive the defendant? So that was important for them to get in with that that witness.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Let me guess.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the jury.
First name is Jason. Last name is Becker. Becker.
And what do you do for work, sir?
I'm a firefighter paramedic, Canton Fire Department.
And how long have you been a member of the Canton Fire Department?
5.5 years.
And
He's
prior
a
to that, what if
fire
any
medic.
other employment did you have sort of within that same field?
I worked at Found Ambulance and South Shore Hospital.
Right.
How long did you work at each of those respective positions?
Found Ambulance was about 5 years.
4 days
South Shore
in.
Hospital, approximately 3
Lot
years.
of ambulances.
And with regard to South Shore Hospital, what is it that you did there?
I was a nursing assistant in the emergency room.
And with regard to your work as a firefighter paramedic for the Canton Fire Department, you were a certified paramedic?
Yes,
And when did you first receive that certification?
October 2021.
And is that something that you receive, or when you receive that, is something that goes on in perpetuity, or is that something
Lolly.
that you have a continuing educational component?
Just ask him if it's current, sir.
It's Con Ed education, really 2 years, you have to recertify.
4 o'clock on Friday.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention
This
to,
jury
January
are now
28th,
experts in how to become a
2022,
paramedic.
January 29th,
Experts.
Were you working on that occasion?
I was.
They now know the entire Canton Fire Department
Where were you assigned?
by name.
I'm sorry. What type of shift were you working on that occasion?
What type of shift?
Yes, like what hour?
The 24-hour ones.
8 a.m. to 8 a.m., 24 hours.
That's all they give us.
So 8 a.m. on the 28th until 8 a.m. on the 29th.
Correct.
And where were you assigned on that day?
I was at Canton, Station 2, Ambulance 2.
And who, if anyone else, was assigned with you to Ambulance 2 at Station 2 on that day?
Daniel Whitley, firefighter Daniel Whitley.
Now, at some point when you were working...
The one who just walked out?
On the 29th, shortly after 6 a.m. or so, did you become aware of a call for station house number 1?
Yes.
And what, if anything, were you aware of as far as that earlier call?
As far as we know, it was a man down the road, initial, and I believe it was upgraded eventually to CPR in progress.
Now,
The feed's
at some
clipping a
point
little. That's
following
not
that,
us.
Approximately 6:41 a.m. or so, did you, your station, dispatch to Fairview Road?
Yes.
And
Good thing we know the questions that are coming.
in regard to
A psych eval, possible Section 12.
And in addition to yourself and firefighter Whitley in Ambulance 2, what, if any, other sort of vehicles were dispatched by your department to that call?
Canton Engine 3.
And if you know, who, if anyone, was on Canton Engine 3 at that time?
Lieutenant Greg Woodbury, firefighter Sam Park.
Now, with regard to the
He doesn't need to ask who's on every apparatus. We already know.
Let me ask you this. Between sort of call volume, what, if any, sort of policy or protocol is there as far as who does what on a particular call?
We switch off.
And so on this particular call that you were dispatched to Fairview Road, what were sort of each of your respective duties and responsibilities between yourself and firefighter Whitley?
Firefighter Whitley was the driver at that point, and it was my tech, is what it's called. So the next patient would be mine.
And so as sort of you were the lead tech on this, is that correct?
Correct.
And so as far as the lead tech's role, what, if any, duties or responsibilities do you have in regard to writing a report?
It's my report. That'd be right.
May I approach you, witness?
Yes.
Oh, good. We got to the person who wrote the report. That's helpful. I saw the question earlier about why the last witness was able to testify to a report that wasn't theirs. It's because they gave that information in the report, and it refreshed his recollection about what he had reported, because he's not the one who memorialized the report. He's the one who memorialized the report.
The first report up here is the engines. Second one would be mine.
You recognize the first few pages of that as the engines report, and the last few are yours, correct?
I'm surprised they're not stopping at
Correct.
4.
And that's your
Oh, they
report
might
with
be. We're
relation
behind
to
in
this
time.
dispatch and this call.
That's true.
Correct.
We're behind in time from court because we started a
Yes.
little late.
I want to see you introduce in a minute.
So court might be done for the day,
So
but
both reports through this
we're
witness?
behind.
Is there any objection?
Yeah, just take a look at the DA's copy.
So they're admitting this into evidence. I forgot we were behind on time. And they're going to sidebar about something in the report. instead of admitting the entirety of the report. So yeah, court is probably done for the day. But we are behind on time because I started late. I had a meeting at lunch.
Bless you.
Bless you.
I don't know who sneezed, but
With that addendum, I would seek to introduce and admit that as the next exhibit.
Okay.
oh, they redacted something out of there, which I imagine is personal identifying information.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, can I return the report to the witness?
Yes.
Yes, Mom.
Did somebody say yes, Mom? I have questions.
Seek to introduce and admit that as the next exhibit.
Okay.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, can I return the report to the witness?
Yes.
Yes, Mom.
I think he probably said ma'am, but closed captioning picked up mom, and that's what I'm going with because it's fucking funny. I'm going with yes, mom. Okay, law mom.
When you
I'm teasing. I think it was probably a ma'am.
arrive in the area of 34, when you arrive in the area of Fairview Road, what, if anything, is it that you first observe upon your arrival?
Coming down the street or on scene?
Yes, coming down the street.
Coming down the street, see the live police lights. You can see the fire engine, and which I believe I said it's one black SUV.
Chat, I swear, if you ask me how this is relevant, my answer is going to be, I don't fucking know how we need to know if this man saw red and blues as they were going down the street. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why we're here. I can't help.
And where is it that you and the ambulance sort of parked?
What's up, Fred?
Vehicles that you see?
I believe we parked.
No, don't come looking at my lunch. I see
The
your
SUV
nose
was
working.
facing towards us. We parked to the left. I don't recall where the police cruiser was, though.
I see your nose. I see your nose working.
And when you first arrived there, who, if anyone, is it that you first?
Court's in Eastern time.
When we got on the ambulance,
Court should be done for today. We're just getting caught up.
Officer Saraf and Officer Mulaney, they kind of briefed us.
No,
and then
Fred
I walked
wants that
towards
piece of
the black
sausage
SUV.
that's still on my lunch.
And when you walk over to the black SUV, who is it that you observe in that black SUV?
I saw two females.
And of those two females, do you see one of them in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you just identify as to where she's seated or an article of clothing that she's wearing?
Right over there, the jacket on.
That's the record reflect identification of the defendant.
Okay.
Now, with respect to the defendant, Ms. Reed, where within the vehicle is she when you first come up to the vehicle on the field?
When I remember, she was in the front passenger seat.
And what, if any, knowledge that you have as far as the defendant, Ms. Reed, and her relationship to the earlier call that ambulance wanted to dispatch?
Very little. I think we had gotten briefed that she was the wife of the previous patient.
And was that something that she had stated or something that somebody else had stated? Where does that awareness come
I
from?
believe it was one of the Canton police officers that said it.
I'm sorry, what was that answer?
It was one of the Canton police officers.
Okay.
I would guess in the house. Bellamana asked in the chat, where's the third female?
So when you walk up to the car, what is it that you
I don't know. That's my
say
guess.
to her? What, if any, conversation did you have with Ms. Reed at that?
So I went up to the window and introduced myself and just kind of asked what was going on.
And how did she respond to that?
She was kind of, she was distraught. She was crying. She kind of told us that the statements she may have made, she didn't mean it because of the events that she had just gone through.
What, if anything, did she say about that? If anything, did she say about what she had gone through?
She had just done CPR on her husband.
And so she referred to him as her husband as well?
Yes.
And this conversation that you had sort of at the side of the SUV, is that through the door, through the window?
From what I recall, it was to the window.
And at some point, does the conversation move to the ambulance?
Correct.
About how long was the conversation at the vehicle before the conversation shifted to the ambulance?
5 to 10 minutes.
And as far as you're dispatched for a psych or a section 12, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain to the jury sort of that process, just in general terms first, as far as what does that process entail?
And when we get on scene?
Yes.
For a section?
Yes, please.
We go on scene, we kind of look at the environment, see what the environment's like, see if the patient's cooperative, uncooperative, what their demeanor is, if there's any obvious self-harm. If there's none, we kind of go up and talk to them, get a report, and ask them some basic triage questions.
And is that sort of the policy or the protocol or what you followed in this instance with Ms. Reed?
Correct.
Now, beyond what she had indicated to you initially, what, if anything, was she asking you during the course of your conversation with her once you were in the ambulance?
She kept asking if he was dead or could he be dead.
Is that something that she said once or more than once or something?
More than once.
And could you describe sort of the tone of her voice when she was saying?
For those of you asking timeline, and I'm pausing to answer because I see a ton of questions in the chat about there had been 3 women, then 2 women. Piecing it together from the first officer's testimony on the very first day of trial, he said that Karen Reed and who she came with, but he was not clear if it was Karen Reed and one other or 2 others, left and then came back. So there is a period of time between when the victim went to the hospital, Karen Reed got in a car with others and left and then came back. So they are now getting back to the house as this second round of fire medics are arriving for the section 12. So that's a segment in time. I don't know where the third individual went, if they left by car, if they went inside the house. That's not been made clear, but there is a gap in time here between that the prosecutor hasn't made clear, but there's a gap in time here. The ambulance left, other stuff happened. Karen Reed left with, it seems, at least Carrie Roberts, then came back to the house. Then this group was dispatched to the house. It's hard to piece together, and I am piecing that together from testimony because I am sitting here taking notes, trying to help explain it, but the prosecution did not make that super clear. And if you feel like I'm lost, you're not alone. It's not you, it's them. And that's the problem here. So we still don't know, and we don't have the law enforcement officers that made the decision to section 12 Karen Reed, and we don't know why Karen Reed came back to the location to go with them. We don't know. So Karen left, and then somehow they came back. That's where we're at. So that's part of the confusion here. So if y'all are confused, you're confused. Some of you were saying you're confused why she's referring to him as a husband. It might just be to be taken seriously. To not have their relationship downplayed, and to properly attribute the level of grief that she is feeling and the level of integration she is into the family. I mean, they're taking care of kids together. She's in the family chat with his parents and brother. She's good friends and talking daily for hours with his brother's sister. She sees a future together. So I'm not surprised that she's telling law enforcement I'm not surprised, because it doesn't always convey, when you say, oh, that's my boyfriend, it doesn't always convey the same when you say that's my husband or that's my longtime partner. But I think she's shortcutting it to try to not explain. So I'm not surprised she called her partner her husband to allow it to be taken seriously and to explain the severity. It doesn't bother me a bit. So with all of that, how long they've been together has not been made super clear by the prosecution. And at all. So I'm not going to answer that because I don't think it's in testimony yet. And then I saw, did I say sister's husband? It's the victim, John O'Keefe's brother's wife, if I conflated it in my brain. So we'll get to Q&A later.
It's kind of like
so hopefully that helps clear it up.
It was a rapid kind of pressure speech. She was just a lot
Distraught.
repetitive.
And as you were speaking with her, what, if any, observations did you make of her facial area?
She had blood on her face and her neck and her blood around her mouth, her neck and chin.
Right.
So with regard to
she still had his blood on her when this is all going on.
Anything did she say in relation to
that? She said she made him because she just went through a traumatic event, seeing her husband dead, and she had no plan on acting on it.
Now, pursuant to a Section 12 call, what, if anything, are you doing as far as documentation goes with respect to vital signs, things like that?
Well, it depends on the situation. In a situation with misreads, I took a regular just vital signs, pulse oximetry, see her heart rate. But for someone like a female psych patient, it's more verbal.
And as far as any of those sort of vital signs and things that you took, what, if anything, abnormal did you note in regard to that?
There was nothing too abnormal. Just the heart rate might have been a little bit high, but within normal range.
Could you please keep your voice up, sir? Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, I can hear him. His heart rate.
But the vital signs, her heart rate was a little high. It was 98, but it was nothing concerning.
Oh, thanks, Trishalyn.
During the time that you're having this conversation with her in the back of the ambulance, how would you describe it?
She would have periods of calmness, and then other periods she would appear agitated because she didn't want to go to the hospital. But all in all, she was cooperative with us.
Now, at some point, she's cooperative, correct, and agrees to go?
Eventually, yes.
When you say eventually, was there some conversation related to that?
We kind of mentioned to her basically what a Section 12 is. And unfortunately, she'd have to come with us voluntarily or involuntarily.
So you're explaining the process to her, is that correct?
They're explaining this is happening, whether you agree or not. It can be easier if you agree. That's what they're explaining.
As far as the transport goes, who, if anyone, is in the back of the ambulance with her during the transport period?
Just who goes?
Me and firefighter Whitley.
And who, if anyone, was driving the ambulance to the hospital?
Firefighter Park.
And which hospital did you transport Ms. Reed?
We went to the Good Samaritan Hospital.
Now, during the course of transfer to the hospital, what, if anything else, did Ms. Reed say with reference to children?
She was asking.
I mean, that's kind of.
She was talking about Keith's children, and she was unsure, and she didn't know if she'd be able to take care of them. She was worried about that.
She was worried about them.
Yeah, she's worried about who would take care of the children if he was pronounced dead.
Right. She was worried about
if anything, did she say about
John's niece and
herself in
nephew.
reference to the children?
She didn't think that she could take care of him on her own.
And we now know that she also has MS.
As far as this other person,
So there's a little more context for that.
How did she to that person in relationship to yourself?
She was calling him the husband.
Now, with reference,
I can see why they thought law enforcement was overreacting.
with reference to Ms. Reed in this conversation, what, if anything, did she say in regards to the last time that she had spoken to who she called her husband?
She had said that they had gotten into an argument. She was sad because that was the last thing she had said to him was the argument, but she didn't go into detail on what the argument was about or what was said.
With all the context we have from this, it seems like the last argument was he wanted to go out after the bar and she wanted to go home.
Now, with regard,
It's just really sad.
with regard to her speaking about children, what, if any, further conversation did either yourself or firefighter Whitley have with her in regard to that?
With children?
Yes.
I don't recall.
The other female party that Miss Reed was initially with in the vehicle when you first arrived, did you know who that was?
I don't know who she was.
And at any point in time, subsequent to that, did you learn who she was?
I did.
And who did you learn her to be?
She was Miss Carrie Roberts.
And with relation to your conversation with...
How's this going to go?
On that day of January 29th, what, if anything, did she say about Miss Roberts?
Objection.
Sustained.
Were there motions before this about that? Because the prosecutor's asking the question over and over again.
With regard to the sort of medical questions that you were asking,
He moved on.
from those medical questions, what, if any, questions would you typically ask someone with relation to consumption of alcohol or drugs?
Well, probably part of the psych assessment, I asked if she had taken any drugs or alcohol, and she had denied it at that point.
She said that she had not, correct?
Correct.
Well, I don't think she drank it all after she woke up. So
Observations that you testified to earlier in regard to her, and by her I mean Miss Reed's demeanor, did that change at all during the course of your interaction with her, or was that consistent as well?
Demeanor, as in...
he's saying as in
It's
because...
a poorly phrased question. I'm going to try and read.
Yeah, because the questions are so hard to follow. When you have to say multiple times a day to the witness, that was a poorly phrased question.
During the course of your interaction with her, or was that consistent as well?
Demeanor, as in...
It's a poorly phrased question. I'm going to try and rephrase it. So, with regard to her demeanor throughout the course of your interaction with her, how would you describe that?
She was cooperative. Then she'd be calm, and then eventually she would kind of get a little agitated and repetitive questions.
Like she was.
She seemed distraught.
Now, with respect to the person she indicated was her husband, what, if any, questions did she ask either you or firefighter Whitley or both in relation to him?
She was asking if he was dead, or could he be dead, could be dead, and she said, could I have hit him?
Oh.
Was that something that she asked once or more than once?
It wasn't a lot. It was more of, could he be dead, could he be dead?
Well, the other witness in the back of the ambulance didn't say that at all. But could I have hit him?
Just one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
All right, well, he's taking a minute to talk to co-counsel.
Firefighter Becker, just for my own clarification, you testified earlier that first arriving on scene and first spoke with Ms. Reed, she indicated that there were some statements that she said there were some statements that she did not mean, correct?
Correct, suicidal statements.
And so, exactly. So my question is, that was in reference to the suicidal statements she had made prior to your arrival, correct?
Correct.
Not to any subsequent statements, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
Yeah, I think the statements that the
cross-examination?
police found to be instructive, she was like, no, I'm not being literal. I'm being like, I don't know how to continue on after this traumatic event.
I believe so.
I wanted to go back to one piece of testimony that you offered on direct examination, if I may.
Sure.
You had, in response to a question from the prosecutor, about the medical history and your question to Ms. Reed about whether she had had any alcohol to drink. I believe your answer today was she denied having drank alcohol the night before?
At the time that she was, she could have drank, I don't know if she drank alcohol the night before, but at that time I asked if she had any drugs or alcohol, and she said no.
I'm sorry, if I just didn't hear.
Yeah, you need to keep your voice up so I speak
Okay.
directly into
Sorry.
the microphone.
So I asked her if she had any drugs or alcohol, and she said no.
Oh, if she had any drugs.
Well, if she'd taken any drugs or alcohol, she said no.
Did you specify a time period?
I just assumed it'd be in the last few hours for the reason why we were there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Unsure if she had alcohol days prior, but for the reason why we were there.
Okay. So.
And that makes sense to me. If she had been drinking the night before, everyone seems to agree they were drinking the night before. She went home, went to sleep, got up, and then all of this went down. So if the question is, have you had any drugs or alcohol? Well, she woke up and went. So he's assuming from the time she woke up to the time she ended up there, but he didn't clarify from the night prior or when, because this is, I think we're at like 6:30 in the morning. It's not really clear because the prosecutor didn't ask, but we'll see. So he's like, I didn't clarify.
Was it your understanding that
I don't think that's a lie either. I think it's
understanding of what you were asking.
An unclear question gets an unclear answer.
So the objection sustained.
An unclear question gets an unclear answer.
Well, days prior, but for the reason why we were there.
Okay. So was it your understanding that the two of you had an understanding of what you were asking?
Sure.
Objection, move to strike.
Yeah. So the objection sustained. It's stricken. Ask the question differently, Ms. Giannetti.
Thank you,
Speculative.
all right. So I guess with regard to your intent and your state of mind when you were asking that question, you were asking, had you taken any drugs or alcohol within the last few hours? That's what you meant to ask?
Objection.
So the objection sustained.
What did you specifically ask?
So when I ask a patient if any drugs or alcohol, I'm talking about at that point in time. But an hour before, 2 hours before, not.
But what do you ask?
Days
not
before,
what do you
weeks
mean.
before.
What do you ask?
So this was at 6:40 in the morning.
Correct.
Oh, now we have a time.
Did you smell any alcohol on her at that time?
There's
I did
the
not.
question.
Okay.
There's the question.
You would agree that she did tell you at some point that she had had alcohol the night before, correct?
No.
All right. So this is now, what's today, May 3rd of 2024?
Correct.
And this happened back in January, on January 29th of 2022?
Correct.
You were interviewed by a Trooper Michael Proctor on February 14th of 2022. Do you recall that?
I recall meeting with him, yes.
And February 14th of 2022
It's
would have
closer in
been a little
time.
bit more than 2 weeks after January 29th of 2022, correct?
Correct.
Your memory of what Karen Reed told you about whether she had anything to drink the night before would have been much better on February 14th of 2022 when you were talking to Trooper Michael Proctor than it would be today, correct?
Correct.
Because your memory doesn't get better over time, correct?
Certain circumstances, sure.
All right.
He's like, well, it really
And
depends.
With regard to
If you show me a video, I
whether-
might remember better.
Karen had indicated that she took any drugs, you told Trooper Proctor she said that she had not, correct?
Correct.
With regard to whether she had had alcohol the night before, you told Trooper Proctor on February 14th of 2022 that she did consume alcohol last night, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
All right, I'm going to see a sidebar on this, please.
I don't know why this is a fight. There's video of her at the bar. I don't know why this is a fight. I don't know why this is a fight. Everyone agrees that they were at the bar drinking. Why is this a fight? Why is this a fight? Why are we fighting? Why are we fighting over this? This is okay. I'm gonna zoom. I don't know why we're fighting. I don't think this is okay.
With your permission, I'll repeat the question.
Also,
Sure.
The prosecution has charged her with a DUI causing death. I don't know why they're objecting.
Told Trooper Proctor on February 14th of 2022 that Karen had told you that she did consume alcohol the previous night, correct?
If that's in his notes,
Well, is your memory exhausted as to whether you told him that?
I don't recall.
If you saw his report with your statements in it, would that refresh your memory?
Sure.
It's a 2-page report. I'll give you both, actually. It's a 2-page report.
Yeah, give them
I'll give you both pages, but I have highlighted a line on the second page, so I would direct you to that. May I approach?
Yes. And take your time reading it, sir.
Yes, yeah. And please read it silently to yourself and look up at me when you're done.
Was Yannetti also a school teacher? Okay, just look at me when you're ready. But telling the witness what to do when the witness is nervous is helpful. Because then the witness is like, what do we do next?
Thanks. Wait for a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But also,
So I did say.
so Mr. Becker, a couple of things. Wait for a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But also,
Sorry.
you have to keep your voice up.
Okay.
I'm close to you and I'm having trouble hearing you. Most of the jurors are further away.
And the way this works is I have to collect that from you and then ask you a question.
I can hear him just fine. So the microphone's picking him up, but the courtroom is not, which is where there's that disconnect. These mics do not feed into the courtroom, just to us.
Having reviewed that document, does that refresh your memory as to whether or not Karen Reed, or strike that? Having reviewed that report, does that refresh your memory as to the fact that
Does that refresh your memory?
Does that refresh your memory?
Ma'am?
It does.
Okay. And so did you tell Trooper Proctor?
If you are going to jump in and ask anyone to rephrase any fucking question, I need it to be Mr. What if any, who if anyone. Why? I know it's the end of the day, but this attorney is not the attorney that you need to be worrying about with the questioning, Your Honor. Could you talk to the prosecutor, please? That man has sent 175 words to ask why, and you're trying to rephrase Yannetti? Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
On February 14th, that Karen Reed had told you on January 29th that she had consumed alcohol the night before that.
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
Folks, she was drinking the night before. That's going to be well established, I'm sure.
That when you were listening to her talk at times, that her speech was very rapid.
Correct.
And particularly when she had said the words, is he dead? Is he dead? She would repeat it repetitively, correct?
Correct.
And she was fixated on that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, she was worried he was dead.
And with regard to the last interaction that she spoke about with whom you thought she said her husband, she didn't give you any detail about that, correct?
She did not.
You don't know whether it was an in-person communication?
That wasn't my position to ask more details about that.
Oh, and I'm not criticizing you, sir. I'm just trying to get to what your knowledge was in terms of
Right.
information you got.
He's like,
from
I
her.
just am trying to
She didn't
understand.
specify that it was an in-person communication, correct?
No,
She didn't specify as to whether it was a phone conversation?
she did not.
She didn't specify whether it was a text message exchange back and forth?
She did not.
And she didn't specify whether it was an angry voicemail that she left, correct?
She did not.
And he's like, and I'm not asking more about the fight. For sure.
No further questions. Thank you.
I think that's going to be
Just
it.
one moment, Your Honor.
Okay.
Oh, maybe there's a redirect. Shalgol said, I think you made up your mind about the judge. I'm going call by call. This morning, I was very happy with how she instructed the jury. This afternoon, I'm very annoyed with the rephrasing of the question. We're just
Nothing further
doing
for this witness, Your Honor.
call by call.
All right.
We're going
All right,
day by
Mr.
day.
Becker, Firefighter Becker, you are all
And
set.
it will
sir. Thank you
fluctuate. We
very
are
much.
done with this day.
That's okay. Thank you. Yes, you can leave that right where it is. Thank you, sir.
It's going to be the end of the day on Friday. Okay. Tell the jury to go for the
Your
weekend.
next witness, Mr. Lally?
Wait, what?
May we approach?
Sure.
Not me being like, it's Your Honor, it's Friday, but because we're behind on time, I don't know exactly how much time there's left in the court day, so I can't be of much assistance there. All right. I'm going to scrub through until the lawyers come back. Oh, wait. No. Yes. Okay. Wait, where are we?
Or is it make additional that are in the 300s and 200s. So what I would like to do
the jury, it
is
seems like.
take all of these, and I know Madam Court Reporter has been great about
The evidence is a mess,
sticking around
is what
all
she's saying.
late during the week to pre-mark things. This is more important to me that we get the record straight from this point. I would prefer the jurors to have the exhibits in order and not have numbers 200 and 300 in where they should be 15 and 16. So what I would like you to all do is take a look at the exhibits that have actually been introduced. Their prior numbers, if you have referred to them by their prior numbers, I will permit you for the rest of the trial to say previously referred to as 308, but now exhibit 15
I hate this.
until you feel you don't need to do that anymore. So it means things are going to have to be renumbered. Madam Court Reporter, was there anything else we needed to discuss on this? Is there anything else you need from the lawyers?
I hate that so much.
Okay. So I don't want to use your name. You've got a list of everything, and Mr. McDermott's got a list of everything that's been introduced. Do you need me to do this, or is this something you can all do with Madam Court Reporter?
You're the one making them do it.
I want to come out and make sure it's right. All right, so why don't you all take
It is
10
late
minutes
on Friday
to see if you can work this through. I'll come out at the end of 10 minutes, see what you have, and we'll make sure the record's straight.
I hate this.
Does that make sense to everybody?
It does. The only thing that I would ask to add to that, Your Honor, is in conformity with the court's ruling as far as redaction to the run sheets and the run reports. I'm not sure if they've been stickered or not, but there are medical records with regard to both the victim and the defendant that would be in there, and I would ask for them to
be sealed,
either be marked for identification or taken out at this point.
I think they need to be marked for identification.
McLaughlin indicates they haven't been marked yet, so I would just ask to sort of retrieve.
All right, so that's sort of the second point. I assume there are many pages of medical records, and one of the things I told you this morning is if records are going to be introduced subject to redactions, those redactions have to be done before they're introduced. It's going to take some time, so you have to be, if you're not in agreement, then you need to tell me what you're not in agreement over, and I'll have to decide it, but they need to be redacted beforehand. Just because this is a long trial, I don't want it to take any longer than it necessarily has to be, and we have to make sure all of the exhibits are in order, especially if they do end up numbering in the hundreds. So, all right, so you've factored that into your schedule. We've got many days that we won't be in session. It seems like a good use of counsel's time to redact records and talk. If you need additional time and we need to cut into the evidence, I'd prefer not to, but I need to know. All right. So I have received from the Commonwealth all of the videos that I requested. I received a flash drive today. When can I get the videos? I thought I was clear yesterday. Apparently I wasn't. So when can I get all of the videos that the defendants intend to introduce? I had hoped to look at them over the weekend.
We can do, it's not a matter of getting them onto a flash drive. That's quick. It's just a matter of getting them to the court. So I would invite the court to direct us how, if you want to use the weekend, let us know. We
help
work
us
on Saturdays and Sundays.
So you can't do it today. You can't do it before you leave. I don't think your IT person's here, right?
I might
Oh.
be able to.
If you can do it before you leave, if he can
He's
just
like, I might
download it
could.
onto a flash drive, that would be great. Do you want to go talk to him and see how long?
You might be able to do that.
We may be able to do that.
Why don't you talk to him?
That would be a Mike could right there.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
We won't leave until we give them to you.
That would be great. And Ms. Gianetti, yesterday you did say that you'd also give me some idea on why you think they're coming in.
Cool.
Okay, so
How
if
would
you
he
have
know
that
that
would
at this
be great.
point?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, ma'am.
I just want to make sure I'm very clear about what the court would like. We provided the double videos, the ones that we had put the good and Sirach cameras together. The court wants every single video that we.
Oh, let me clarify. The court believes that she would like every video you think you might kind of maybe sort of what if any use potentially in the next 8 weeks.
To produce?
Yes.
Yes.
For the rest of trial?
Yes.
Okay, understood.
All right, and that's what I requested from both of you. I received, Ms. Gilman, tell me if I'm wrong, but Mr. McDermott handed me a flash drive today that said this was all the Commonwealth's video exhibits. Yes.
And that was after we met this morning, correct? Yes. Okay.
All right, so that'd be great. I just, I want to know what's on them.
What you
I was
also
surprised yesterday, and
Understood.
I shouldn't be
she
surprised.
doesn't like being surprised. Okay.
All right, so I'll come out after you remark the exhibits. Do you need a break before then, Madam Court Reporter? Mr. McDermott? All right, thanks.
Court, all rise, please.
All right. They're not done for the day, so I'm going to zoom real quick. I promise you guys we're going to get to Q&A. I'm really trying to zoom through this till the end of court so we know what's happening. So I'm trying to catch us up in real time. Oh, maybe they just are done. Well, this feed just ends. So I guess they're done. Give me 1 second. Let me make sure that they don't come back on the record. They might not. The feeds might have just been like, well, they're not coming back. So give me 1 second and just check one more feed and see if anybody else comes back, just for my own curiosity and for the sake of closing the fucking loop. Let's see. Who is keeping open the possibility that they come back to court? Gosh, I think they're probably done. It's almost 5 o'clock. But it looks like Law and Crime is keeping their stream live. Let's see if anybody else is too. Give me 1 second. I'm going to check Court TV's feed. Because it looks like a couple of the feeds are staying open, which means they might come back into court. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Yeah, maybe not. All right, I'm just going to leave this feed up and see if, while we're answering questions, if it comes back up, we'll know. The problem is this court has not been super communicative with anyone, including the media. So with that, they just don't know if she's just going to hop back on the record and say something, which is tough. So yeah, it's 4:40 local time. I'm going to answer your Q&A, and if there's nothing there, we will, then there's nothing there. I see some of you asking if I'm going to cover the Darrell Brooks hearing. Not today. I have family stuff to do this evening. B, we've got a bunch of hearings to catch up on, so I'm not going to jump to a different hearing. So with all of that, let us get to your questions and a summary of the day, because we're in this now. We're in this now. I'm sorry, we're in this now. When this trial was first like, yes, I'm going to cover this, The estimate was like 4 or 5 weeks. And then the court was like 8. And I was like, oh God, okay. We're in it now. Now I need to know what happens. We are in it now. We're just in it now. We're in it now. I'm in it. I'm invested. We're in it. That's where we're at. So at the end, what day is it? Excuse me. My soul is like, I'm done with this case. At the end of day 496,000, I'm sorry. No, at the end of day 4 of the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed, we did have more fire paramedic testimony, but this started the testimony of the firefighters and paramedics that showed up to take Karen Reed to the hospital. There is still a glaring gap in that because they have not called the police officers who made the decision to put Karen Reed on a psych hold, which in this jurisdiction is Section 12. In like California, it's 5150. In Florida, it's Becker Act. It has different names, but it is a forced psych hold, essentially. Law enforcement at some point determined there would be a hold, and then the call came back out for an ambulance to transport Karen Reed to the hospital. They had conversations with Karen Reed on the way to the hospital. She was referring to her boyfriend, the victim in this case, Officer John O'Keefe, as her husband, and had made comments prior to law enforcement or prior to fire and paramedic arriving on scene that she was contemplating self-harm. But then she indicated to them, I don't mean that. But then repeating, asking, is he dead? And one of the witnesses at the end of the day said, she said to them, could I have hit him? Is he dead? And was very much questioning the paramedics, like, is he dead? What do I do? And heartbreakingly to me, asking them over and over about the kids. What's going to happen to the kids? I don't know if I can take care of them. They're not my kids, but they're not his kids. And that's when the first paramedic to testify this afternoon realized that they were talking about Officer John O'Keefe, because it is well known in the area that he took his niece and nephew and took custody of them after both his sister and brother-in-law passed away. And that's when they're like, oh. And that was absolutely heartbreaking testimony that the prosecution just kind of moved through, that she was asking about not being sure if she could take care of the kids and not being sure what was going to happen to the kids. But everything we saw from that testimony seemed to me like deep concern. We also learned that Karen Reed, in giving her prior medical history, told them that she does have MS. And that is the first time we're hearing this in this trial, and the first time the jury is hearing that information, that she has previously been diagnosed with MS. And so we are just getting to the point of Karen Reed being transferred to the hospital on the psych hold. We know from the first witness in this trial, the brother of John O'Keefe, that they saw her being restrained at the hospital. And that is kind of where in time this case will pick up as we get into week 2 next week. There's also been much fuss over how the exhibits are numbered. It seems that the judge had them pre-mark the exhibits and now wants them numbered in the order they're introduced, which is causing some issues with how the exhibits are marked, which is going to create confusion for everyone. When you pre-mark exhibits, they get introduced out of order oftentimes, but most courts just allow them to come in out of order. And so I'm very confused why the judge, after allowing the extensive amount of exhibits, including videos, to be pre-marked, is now determining they need to be marked and numbered as they come in. It seems like a lot of make work for the lawyers and a lot of potential confusion since we're a week into trial. And that would have aggravated the hell out of me. And the lawyers seem to take it in better stride, at least in court, than I imagine they're thinking in their heads. What else happened this afternoon? I'm trying to think if there's anything else that stands out to me. There had been the question to the last paramedic about whether or not they perceived that Karen Reed had been drinking. Did she smell of alcohol? Were they asking those questions? And they were asking her if she had been drinking or if she had done any drugs, because they need to know what she has ingested before they transport her to the hospital on a psych hold. They said no. And of all of the witnesses that have interacted with Karen Reed, no one mentioned once that they smelled alcohol on her breath or perceived that she might be under the influence. Everyone has said that she seemed distraught. And they again made the note that while she was in the ambulance with them, she still had the victim's blood on her face and her neck from trying to give CPR to John O'Keefe. The final area that they were fighting over, quite fearsomely actually, was statements Karen Reed made about Carrie Roberts, the other woman that was with her, and I think is the one that drove her back to the scene when they decided to place her on a psych hold, because she had left the scene with somebody and then came back. And the paramedic said, it seems like you have a good support system. It's going to be okay. And she supposedly said, well, do you know Carrie Roberts? That's an odd thing to say for someone who knows Carrie Roberts. And then there was a lot of fighting over what the defendant may or may not have said more about Carrie Roberts. So I'm not sure exactly where that line of questioning is going to go, but the defense, for the first time, fought to keep that out. This is the first thing we've really seen them on their feet, objection after objection after objection, to keep that information out. And now I, like chat and probably the jury, very much want to know why. Some of you might know why if you've been following this case, but the jury doesn't know yet. And that's where we end for the weekend. Let's get to your questions. It looks now like all of the feeds have ended, but the Storm Watcher feeds have begun. So I'm seeing some of those. So for all of you in the path of this weekend's weather, stay safe. But it seems like all of the court feeds have ended and court is probably just about done for the day. Remember two things. First, if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. If you just found this channel during the trial, I would very much appreciate it. Two, if you want to stay in the loop with when the recaps go live, when I'm going live, when the podcast goes live, the Lawnard app over at lawnardapp.com, or just put Lawnard into your app store, iOS and Android. It's a free app. It will notify you when we are going live, when certain witnesses are going to take the stand. The second Trooper Proctor takes the stand, I will let you know. The moment we have a witness that is not a paramedic, I will let you know. I will let you know. When we get into the key civilian witnesses that were on scene, I am going to let you know, because I know a lot of you have things to do and you're like, really? Another firefighter? Seriously? Okay, I've got emails to write. I'll be back. The app is so I can let you know when to be back so you don't miss those key weekends, those key updates, those key witnesses. The Quick Bits channel is where we do our summaries. As I summarize things during the streams, we clip those down into a summary for you over on Quick Bits. So if you missed a day, those are the highlights as I see them that day. Things might occur to me later, and I will talk about those the next day or the next morning, but those are the key takeaways. For those of you saying key weekends, Emily is done for the week. I don't know if I've ever been more tired trying to pay attention to an attorney's line of questioning. Even Elaine's questioning, though it was a lot of what if any, was more concise than the circular word salad that sometimes is coming out of this prosecutor's mouth. There were moments where we saw very clear, short, linear questioning. And then there are moments that it is just everywhere. But we know this is an extensive witness list. We know there are hundreds of witnesses potentially to be called. And chat, we're going to do it together. Chat, we're going to do it together. Chat, we're going to do it together. We've got this. So thank you. And for those of you that just found this this channel, my channel, during this trial, go ahead and let me know. And then in the app, I'm going to share an interview I just did with YouTube and other things. So don't worry. The app is where we keep you up to date on everything. Questions? Did I run? I think I ran it. I ran it and then told you that the app is where we need to go. All right. Let's get to the questions before I have to go and get to an event. Thank you, Ann Bell. Ann Bell said, have faith, friends. EDB will catch us up. I had a meeting at lunch that I could not miss that we had been trying to get on the books for quite a while. And I was really optimistic that there was no court today. I needed the recovery. I needed the recovery day. I'm going to need the recovery weekend. Broken taillight, but no body damage. It definitely wasn't a lot of body damage to the car. EDB, when law enforcement takes a car and the owner won't get it back, does the owner still have to pay for it if it was financed? I have absolutely no idea. I don't know. But if you stop paying, what are they going to do? Go repossess it from police custody? But I really don't know. I've never actually had that situation come up where I had to consider it because a lot of have I ever worked a case where the vehicle was still in working order and impounded? No. All of the vehicles we had in impounded evidence were very much not operable. And I have seen some collisions do damage to humans, but they were substantially impacted. Destiny said, my mom gets in my car and goes, happy birthday month. And my ADHD self didn't realize it was May. Have you not been on Instagram, Destiny? It's gonna be May. You can't ignore it. It's our birthday month. Congratulations. 21 and 27 days. We'll likely be here with EDB for it. Congratulations. Have a lemon drop on me. And cheers, cheers, cheers. Wait, what? Said loving Friday night court. People are leaving court. Look, hold on. Court seems to be over because people are leaving. Well, that's helpful. I love an Aperol Spritz, by the way. I love an Aperol Spritz, and congratulations on a year past surgery. I love an Aperol Spritz. This must have been the same person that was out on the scene. I think it's odd that Karen Reed has to walk all the way down like that. So, court's done because now everybody's leaving. This is outside the courthouse. Same. Must have been the same camera. Okay. Court is done. That's what we get for the on scene. That's sometimes why I leave the feeds up, because you never know. There are two front entrances. Interesting. I think that's regarding the home. Question, does the background camera keep records? If so, it should show if she hit him or not. Happy at heart, the home has sold since the incident. We have not seen pictures, I don't think, that have the garages. So I don't know if that camera was put in later. With this home being the subject of much conversation because of this case, it is not unreasonable to me that the new owners might want security cameras. So I don't know. Why are there two front doors? I don't know. Couldn't guess it was blue after the great pictures. Same. Literally no idea. Kat said, question, are there rules that the judge must follow for allowing the lawyer to speak in open court with the jury out? Not really. The judge could require it to be done at sidebar. I mean, one of the biggest rules is that it has to be on the record, but judges can do things on the record in their chambers. They can do things on the record outside the presence of the jury in open court or not open court. So yes, there are times it needs to be on the record, but that doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be in the presence of the cameras. And so that's a bit different. Courtney said, I just can't believe there's no body damage by the taillight. I work at a car dealership and have had extrication training with the fire department. Glass doesn't break by hitting a soft body. We will see. There will be experts on experts on experts. Emily Outdoors said, I had a hot mic oops accident one time. I might have said that opposing team's basketball coach definitely peaked in high school after hearing him scream at children for an hour. I mean, Emily, I don't see any lies though. Like no lies detected. Screaming at children from especially youth sports coaches is a no. It's a no for me. Though parents screaming at the children like that during youth sports is also a no for me. I don't find it very productive. That's just me. Anne says I'm not. But then again, Emily, are you being a little hypocritical? No, I would scream at others at my brother's water polo games. I would not scream at my brother. Sometimes I would scream at the referees for not making calls when people were injuring said brother, water polo, but I didn't yell at him. I have definitely yelled at a couple coaches. There was the one kid. Some of the members know the story. I did yell at the one kid, but he did break my brother's arm. But I wasn't coaching him. Anne said, I'm not buying that damage done to the vehicle was from hitting a person and causing death. I think having the vehicle on scene is going to be incredibly instructive to the jury. Maybe not in the way the prosecution intends, but again, the evidence is the evidence. The facts should be the facts, and they will come out. So if that's what the car looks like, then that's what the car looks like. Luna said, I hit a plastic trash bin with my car and had more damage than that. Melanie said, 1, who dropped someone off at the other side of a property instead of the driveway. 2, not a dent around the taillight impact with a 6'2", 220-pound man. Proposed pickle name, Bernie Albert or Briny Albert. Right now, I'm really kind of loving, Oodalolly or Oodillolly. What was the other one? Dillygag or like lollygag, but dilly. There was another one I had in here earlier. Oh, wait. The asystole, the piccole, I really liked. And what did I make a note of today? We're not there yet, but I made another pickle name note at some point in trial today. Oh, sort of a pickle. Because if this prosecutor says kind of, sorta, or sorta one more time, so sort of a pickle was in there. Enchanted Wing says, this ain't helping the prosecution. It's revealing inconsistencies in testimony. And if that's the testimony, then that's the testimony. There's not much they can do because it's been through 2 grand juries. So the testimony is the testimony. And none of it's been great. Medicated Moment said maybe the prosecution is calling because they don't have much else. If that's the case, that's not going to be real good for them. The Lady in Black said, uncomfortable how the testimony being crammed in with the opposing sides. The distance between Karen Reed and the victim's family looks uncomfortable to me, especially because she was so close with the victim's sister-in-law. Like the two of them are just sitting there so close together in the courtroom where literally the sister-in-law is sitting in eyesight to Karen Reed. In most courtrooms I have practiced in, the counsel tables and the courtroom are laid out more like, well, literally every other courtroom we've watched, from Gwyneth Paltrow to Alec Murdaugh. The family is all the way behind everyone. So the family's looking at the back of, Alec Murdaugh's head in court, not sitting aside the person where they can make eye contact. It's a very awkward setup. And even if the family, and I saw some saying, but what if the family, like the victim's family, supports Karen Reed? Even if that's true, you're still sitting there after having testified against somebody that you were friends with in a traumatic circumstance, but they don't seem to be making much eye contact. It's a very, very difficult layout for everyone. I think there's something to be able to sit back behind, and the families can always see the juries in every courtroom I've seen, but to sit behind the defendant, I think gives you a little distance, not where you're making eye contact because the entire gallery is around you in a U shape, like staring down at you. It just looks very awkward and stressful to me, like uncomfortable. Like the whole gallery is built up around those sitting in the middle of the courtroom. It it makes me anxious. Like, it's a lot. Even when the attorney was trying to move to the side and back, he's like, oh, I don't want to block a juror because they are literally right there. So it is definitely a lot. The prosecutor's way of questioning clearly shows how much he trusts this case. The people are talking about it already on camera. And people are already talking about it on camera. I mean, yes. Why do they keep identifying the defendant? Because they have to make sure they're all talking about the same person, just to erase any doubt. When you say Karen Reed, is that Karen Reed? That's not uncommon. And we'll see that with every witness that talked to Karen Reed saying, and the person I talked to named Karen Reed is that person. I had to try. Oh gosh, Emily. Brief. I had a trial where we were questioning the one percipient eyewitness that we could find, because the others we could not. And when we got to identifying the defendant, the witness sat up there and looked at the defense table and looked at the defendant and went, is that supposed to be him? Like, is that supposed to be him? That doesn't look like him. But is that supposed to be him? And I was like, well, sir, it's not supposed to be anyone. Do you see the person in the courtroom? No. Is that supposed to be the guy? No, sir. Do you see the person in the courtroom or not? No. I'm like, okay. So then I brought in the booking photo and said, is the person in this photo the person that you saw? And they said, yes, that's the person that I saw. So then we tied together the booking photo, the booking record, and the defendant, because the defendant had changed their hair, facial hair, and lost a substantial amount of weight. And this witness did not recognize the person sitting in court from the person the night of the crime, because they looked that different. But it had been like a year and a half. So between the facial hair, the long hair to short hair, and the weight, they were just like, no. But I had seen the booking photo and the person in court being like, well, this might come up. So showed him the booking photo. Yeah, the person in the booking photo is the person. The person they arrested is the person. And then you call in the officer that arrested the person and you're like, is the person in the booking photo the person you arrested that night? Yes. And is that person that person? Yes. Okay. So there's ways to do it. But yeah, is that supposed to be the person? Because people look different. And when you're under stress, it's not always easy to identify someone that you've seen for 5 minutes under a stressful situation. Anyway, I digress. But is that supposed to be him? And I was like, well, I mean, no, it's not supposed to be anybody. I had a friend whose case where they identified the defense attorney, and the defense attorney was like, it's not me. It was funny, but it happens. Eyewitnesses are eyewitnesses. So you ask them to identify the person that they are talking about in court. Kristen said, saw Legal Bites started a what if any lally tally. That's going to be tough, but I'm glad she's posting it to Twitter. I mean, God bless her for taking tally marks and counting. I could never. I just keep rolling my eyes. Scout said, what, if anything, are y'all drinking to get through this questioning? I mean, I had fizzy water and it wasn't enough. Motion for facts greater than what, if anything, merch. Well, I don't know if I want to memorialize it. I'll think about it. Tiny Dragon said, damn, when my husband died, the officer and the medics helped me to the couch, got me a blanket, offered to call people for me, held my hand, and now I appreciate them even more. Tiny Dragon, first, I'm sorry for the loss of your husband. Second, isn't it a stark difference with what's happening here when law enforcement was like, what we need to do is put her on a psych hold, which like in my core kind of offends me. And I'm trying to like process that side of my brain to the side. And then medics show up and are just like, so this is trauma and grief, and trauma and grief look like being distraught. So these are normal emotions given the situation, but police had already written the order, which means they have to transport. You could see these last two did not want to transport her and did not agree with law enforcement's call. You could see it. And I understand why they didn't want to transport her. I don't like it at all. So Tiny Dragon, I'm glad they were there to be supportive. Again, law enforcement at this point had not treated this like a crime scene at all. This was not being treated as a crime scene at 6:40 in the morning. It pisses me off. Miranda said, my dad's name is Brian Albert. This is weird. I imagine so. Sandy said, I don't know if that's car, dog, or Yeti, but I can tell you those injuries are more than furrows. I think he was trying not to say like gouges, but we've definitely seen that they are deeper cuts. Kelly H said, I fell asleep watching this stream and dreamt that EDB was a witness. Oh God, don't speak it into existence. It's not, my name has come up in court documents before. I don't need it to come up in this one. We're just trying to see what the jury sees. People, 11 witnesses, and no one has mentioned that Karen Reed seemed intoxicated or smelled of alcohol. And Jen, since you sent this a couple hours ago now we have exactly the opposite. So now we have the opposite. Diana said, EDB, every time it shows O'Keefe's family, I wonder if their feelings towards Karen and what happened is changing while more evidence and inconsistencies are revealed. I don't know. And maybe at the end of the trial we will. Wedge, good to see you. Wedge said, I've never seen or heard a jury being seated at the back of the courtroom, always to the side. It's important for the jury to have a clear view. This jury's at the side, but the courtroom's like a U shape. So the jury's at the side, and then the back is the defendant's family, and then the other side is the victim's family in this court. But I've never seen a jury sat at the back either. What, if anything, is sort of going on this weekend? Our members only Zoom call is going on this weekend, and we will have all of that posted in your members' spaces. Brianna said, I want to hear how many years each of these people spent studying for, performing, and earning recertifications for their jobs. If the defense wants to besmirch them, I want to have to work to tear all that down. I want them to have to work to tear that all down. That's fair. I think how long have you been a paramedic is needed, but the training is the same for everybody. I think what did you do before you were a paramedic? Fair. I don't think they need the entire training program protocol every single time. And how long have you been a paramedic? 15 years. And do you recertify every 2 years? Yes. And is your certification valid now? Yes. I think that's fair. But yes, yes. Twisty said, these are most definitely punctures of dog marks from dog fangs. Kind of looks like how Canine goes for the arm training videos. We will see. Look, again, the way you guys are looking at that going, excuse me, what are those? The jury is going to be doing the same thing, especially depending on what their life experience is, what their experience with animals is. The jury might be doing the same thing. There are going to be lots of experts to testify about the injuries to the victim here. Shore Life Creation said, I'm watching this cold so far. I haven't heard anything that sells me yet, but we've got a long way to go yet. Interested to hear from other than the EMTs. Yes. The prosecution has gotten into the very, very, very tippy top of their case. But nothing other than the snow is really solid to me. Even the I hit him, there's a lot. Oh, there's a cicada on my window. Are we at the beginning of this? Even that, there is questions for me, and you might disagree, which is always okay. There are questions for me if it is I hit him, or did I hit him, or a combination of the two, because of all of the comments that we've now gotten down to the last person where she is saying, could I have hit him? And when she was talking to the first female firefighter, Katie McLaughlin, she was looking at another woman that she was with saying, I hit him. So even that is not a cut and dry statement at all for me. I think there's a lot of questions about it. Stina G said, my husband just found D's Nuts bars at the grocery store and is now a teen again. Our actual teen said, Dad, no. Also, my birthday is tomorrow. Well, happy birthday tomorrow. The Mr. Beast D's Nuts bars are funny. If this occurred outside, why lack of blood in the snow? JS, I don't know if there's a lack of blood in the snow. I don't know when the pictures were taken. Nobody's made it clear. But yes, they keep showing those pictures without making it clear. I'm sure the jury is thinking the exact same thing. It's interesting, people that showed up after the cops say they saw 2 women instead of 3, which lends to the defense saying someone went into the house. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Jury, Karen Reed is not guilty because prosecution sort of didn't prove it. We've got a long way to go, but look, if there is doubt, then there is doubt. Cherry said, who foots the medical bills when the patient is forcibly hospitalized? I would imagine on the holds, it is the state, but I don't know medical billing well enough to give you a definitive answer. I sort of what if anything, do not know medical billing. Wedge said maybe it'll come up later, but aren't dispatch called the 911 and or any officer's body cams and evidence? No, not yet. And I don't think there's any body cams, but no dispatch is not in evidence, and no, the 911 call is not yet in evidence. None of those have been admitted yet. So Casey Cat said, I worked a lot in ED and ICU most of my career, and I never saw marks like that from a car accident. I've seen a lot of dog attack injuries like that, even one of my own. And this is where we are going to have a battle of the experts in this case. Seems like she was gaslit into a question if at fault. Maybe. And again, maybe. Pixie says, question, hey Pixie, so she doesn't get her car back ever? I would imagine after the case is done, she could. I would imagine after the case is done, she could. What happens in cases like that? Does insurance cover it? I don't know. Or are you just forever without your car with no reimbursement? I don't know. If she's acquitted, I mean, if it's still in property and she's acquitted, she should get it back. If it goes up on appeal, if she's convicted, she might not get it back. But it really just depends. But it's been in evidence now for 2 years? Let's see. This seems to help defense. Thank you for covering it. Happy Annie, you're welcome. And I think it's helpful, again, going in cold to see, based on everything we know, where we think the evidence falls. Heather says the section 12 for me are some of the puzzle pieces for the defense case. They immediately started pitting this on her. The prosecution isn't establishing anything yet. I disagree, Heather. We do know that it's snowing and there was a hill and a lot of firefighters. But other than that, everything else seems to still be in question. Question, why was that struck? Aren't Karen's statements allowed? Karen's statements are allowed. I don't know why the statements with regard to Carrie Roberts weren't allowed. I have questions about that are going to linger in my mind. After trial, I will probably go back and look at some of the pretrial hearings to see if we can suss it out because I'm questioned. Tracy Fagan said, you just section 12'd me. I'd be pissed too. Yeah, she still has her boyfriend's blood on her face from performing CPR, and they're trying to get her into a hospital gown. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yellow Pill MP said that can explain her facial expressions. I think you're referring to the prior diagnosis with multiple sclerosis. Ellen said, sorry, I'm super behind, but those are 100% German Shepherd scratches. I don't know. I have a 2-year-old and I have recent pictures of her scratching me like that. They're called land sharks for a reason. Lady Kirkpatrick said, don't know by weather, but I do know about Fairview snow. Annabeth, both paramedics in the ambulance signed the report and all members at the scene are listed on the report. Meg said, don't disparage Fred. We might have to call his attorney. He was sussing out my food. We live here now. I still don't know what happened. Evil Oddish, same. Like how? And I wonder if the jury's more confused after the jury view. Like they're looking at the car and they're looking at where everybody said the victim was. And they're like, what? So Fred did not run off with the sausage though. I hate sort of happening in court. Just because says this all makes me even more angry that the brother blew her a kiss at the hospital instead of going over to hug her or anything. I don't know if the brother knew all of this then. The brother got the call and went to the hospital. I don't think any of this was clear. Legally saying husband is indeed a big deal because it gives access to decision-making that providers legally cannot give if he has other family. I think hospitals will normally double check that. When we were talking about whether or not this mattered, I didn't find it suspicious that she was referring to him as her husband, given the circumstances. It didn't seem inconsistent to me that she had switched. Octo is in the chat, hello friend, and said if you download the app right now, I love you. I have a goal. Well, Octo Love is definitely something that we want on a Friday. So yes, Octo has a goal. So if you haven't downloaded the app yet, you'll make all 8 of Octo's hearts happy. We law nerds have so many questions. Yep. Chloe is the Bubba of this case. I think it will be the bite marks that will be impossible to reconcile, and the clothes not being torn. Because so far the clothes are not torn. So how do you have that injury on an arm and the clothes not impacted? I don't understand. So, 8 hearts, 8 brains. Did I mean 8 brains? Octo, I apologize. 8 brains? All 8 brains happy? Lindsay said, has the suggestion been made of my cousin Dilly? No. But I think that's a really, really good suggestion. My cousin Dilly might have to be it because my cousin Dilly is A, hilarious, and B, very appropriate for this case because I didn't realize how much this case was my cousin Vinny. Octonation, 8 hearts. That's quite a condition. Just 3. Sorry, just 3 hearts for the octopus, but 8 brains into each arm. They wrangle the law nerds. I meant brains. Brains. Lizard said every new witness makes the case feel weirder. Imagine how the jury feels. Imagine how the jury feels. Like they can't talk to anyone. Imagine sitting with all of this and sitting there going, what? We get to chat about it. They're trying to piece it together themselves, or they just go home and are like, fuck it, explain it to me later. Carrie Roberts has not really been well explained in court, but she was on the scene with the victim. Becky said, I've hit several deer and even a turkey. All did way more damage than a light, like thousands in repairs. Turkeys are fucking big. I have not hit a deer, also fucking big. But yeah, I've seen cars that have hit deers, lots of damage. Let's see. It's wild how chill everyone is with a dead officer. Yeah, it's wild. Elizabeth, what does the state believe the motive is? Maybe that the relationship was going south and they had been fighting, but it's not clear. Again, the state doesn't have to prove motive, but I don't know how you get to an intentional homicide in this case on these facts without a motive. They don't have to prove it, but I don't know how you leave that glaring hole of doubt because people are going to want to know why. So Baxter said, did I listen to EDB while at bowling practice? Yes. And the prosecution's questioning forced a break because my scores were taking a hit. It's okay. Get the scores first. The replay crew is here for you. Spicy Golden Retriever Energy. It's a great name. I had a customer with a stolen vehicle claim. There was a death police wouldn't release and he still had to pay the loan and he was pissed. I would imagine so. I mean, I don't know what happens in that situation. No Strays ENT said, if my wife drops me at a party and I'm found unalive the next day, the first thing she'll do is point at the house and say, go in there. Karen said, I hit him. That is a fair point. Jordan said, interesting to see what happens with the dog story. Yes. Most states cover uninsured involuntary holds. Okay. I did not know that. Chrissy said, I find it odd how they made a big deal out of her saying he was her husband. My fiance passed a few years ago and it was hard closing accounts, etc., not having been legally married yet. Love you, EDB. And that's fair. Absolutely fair. Thank you all for the gifted memberships. I absolutely appreciate it. Kiara said, question, wasn't there a witness at the beginning that stated one of the other civilians went into the house at one point? Yes. My brain specifically remembers that and I know nothing more than you. Yes. That they saw someone go towards the house. Yes. So Nora said, Emily, do you think the judge sound or act coherent after lunch? Her demeanor shifted dramatically after the jury view and the judge needs to be investigated. I didn't notice that. I will keep an eye, but I didn't notice that. Confused on why he can't just keep counting. I don't remember what part of the trial that was at. What does it matter if she's seen the video? Oh, if the judge has seen the video. The judge doesn't want to be surprised on the exhibits that are being introduced. Why didn't she ask them to do this before trial? She asked them to pre-mark all the exhibits before trial, it seems. And now they're being renumbered. Angel says, I'm ready for a recap. I've missed so much. And on the renumbering, and the reason it would make me so fucking mad if I were these lawyers is because when they're working with their team, you'll hear the lawyer say, can you please pull up number 64? Can you please pull up number 102 or whatever? So their internal charts now have to be like regraphed for like their internal number and the external number, and both teams had already worked together to number them. It's just, it's creating a mess the first week of trial for all of these attorneys, and I hate it for them. I hate it for all of them. Good to see you, Ashley. Ice BB said, I have questions, but I'm part of replay crew. That's okay. We're caught up now. I'm just getting started. Is it time travel? I'm here and y'all are a few hours ahead of me. Why is that console so important? Have you guys figured it out? I think they just wanted my speculation is they wanted the jury to pay attention to how you would shift maybe into reverse, but they didn't say. Kevin, good to see you. Thanks for the laugh from the rant at the judge. I needed the distraction. It pissed me off. Question, when this is all done, can we replay the snark from the viewing? I missed it coming back from work from lunch. It's in there. It would be impossible for me to go find it now. EDB, when are we doing the Zoom call? The Zoom call is on Saturday. The time will be posted up in the member spaces. Hold on, let me pull up my calendar. I don't want to get it wrong for you. At 2:00 Central Standard Time. I don't have that converted into UTC, but 2 p.m. Central Standard. Ashley Elizabeth said, super chat because I loved that so much and it made me laugh, and exactly what we were all feeling. I don't know who I was ranting at that point. I was ranting at somebody. Lexi said something I'm still thinking about. Why would Karen Reed wake up John's daughter and ask where he was if she really thought she had caused him harm with the car? The brother's wife gave us that detail, and that detail is going to come up more. It came up in the prosecution's opening because it was the daughter that called the friends that then went and looked for John. Juliana said she backed into his car, according to the defense. If she was drunk, she might have confused the incidents. Possible. Karen Reed dealing with MS, tumor, and removed colon. So far, Z, what we have in the record is the MS, but I'm sure other things will come in. Heather said people grieve and process trauma differently. There should not be much stock put into what she is saying in that time frame. Heather, I understand. The law is always going to put stock into what people are saying, like Alec Murdaugh, and what Alec was saying after and around the time. Alec was asking law enforcement the same thing. He was on the scene saying, are they dead? Are you sure? But are they dead? And the condition of Paul and Maggie made it a bit more obvious that they were dead. So it's one of those things that's really, really hard. So I get it. I think the defense can, through witnesses, explain it to the jury, and human experience can explain it to the jury, because what is clear from all the witnesses is that she was distraught and was the only one trying to save him. Which in the Murdaugh case, when he said, I went to them, I was trying to touch them, I was trying to save them, and he had not a speck of blood on him. Karen Reed seemed to be doing the same thing, went to him and was trying to save him and had his blood on her, and was doing that. So it's, which one is the one, right? So that's what I'm thinking. The World Wonder said, this is why you don't talk to the cops if someone has died. And even if you're distraught, they can turn it on you like they did with the S12 here. I'm not sure what S12 means, but yeah, that happens. So I'm super involved in this case. Love the accents. I have so many questions. So thankful you're here for all of us, but I hate it here. I mean, there's moments when this prosecution is asking questions. I'm like, are we really doing this? Question, why is she making them do this? The judge making them renumber things? I have no idea. Emily, can the jury find her guilty of the previous charges? The indictment has the second degree the second-degree murder, which is an intentional homicide, the DUI causing death, and the hit and run where a death is involved. So those are the three things. So yes, they could in theory. Though I don't know if I don't know. We'll see, but yes. I saw a question in the chat I wanted to get to. Casey Cat said, a dead local hero officer. Yeah, and no one seems to be treating it like a big deal, except you could see the fire medic being like, it looked like his heart sank as he was testifying when he realized that it was John O'Keefe. Like, he looked upset. And some have asked why they're not referring to him as officer. It might have been a motion in limine that they weren't going to. That might have been addressed by the court earlier, so we just don't know. But you could see his kind of heart sink when he's like, and then I realized who it was. And we all thought very highly of him. So yeah, it's really odd that knowing it's him, they're not treating this like a crime scene. It's really, really odd. It's really odd. So Alex asked, why is the taillight on? How are they supposed to fully examine without it? I imagine it's an evidence and they're going to get that whole taillight casing in court. That would be my supposition. We'll see. George is now in the office with Fred watching the birds. Thank you all for the gifted memberships and welcome to all the new member law nerds. All the member videos are available to you in the member spaces. Chat's looking for every My Cousin Dilly just works. Chat looking forever. My Cousin Dilly just works. My Cousin Dilly does work pretty well. MB said, strangest part to me, EMT didn't ask, hit him with what follow-up? That's key information. No law enforcement, no EMT followed up. One of the witnesses said that they were trying to follow up, but that further questions would not be helpful because she was repeating herself. I don't remember which one it was, but they also testified law enforcement was standing there when she said it. We haven't heard from those officers yet. Why didn't the defense make a bigger deal that both the firefighters thought 12 section wasn't necessary? I thought it was a big deal. If I was them, and this is my speculation, if I were the defense, I would hold that information till closing when the prosecution can't fix it. I would just tuck that away. We're not going to let the prosecution see where we're going with that. I would tuck it away. I think it is a big deal, but I would tuck that away for closing. Just, they don't need to point that out to the prosecution. If the prosecution doesn't think it's a big deal, we think it's a big deal. The jury might think it's a big deal. I wouldn't even put them on. I wouldn't at all. So that's why. So, Paige, not sneaky strategy. Look, if the prosecution doesn't think it, that's their bad, because the whole chat was like, excuse me, what? And if the prosecution doesn't pick up on it, that's on them for sure. So, let's see. Looking forward to tomorrow to seeing new members. We pro tip, download the Law Nerd app so you don't miss tomorrow's live. The live tomorrow is our Zoom call, not a live. Just want to clarify. Lynn said 2 questions. Where is the shoe? Where is the dog? The dog has been rehomed and no one knows about the shoe. The medic said she didn't smell alcohol. So when did they actually check her blood alcohol for the DUI charge? They drew the blood at the hospital, subject to the Section 12. But there's a lot of controversy about the retrograde extrapolation to try to take the blood alcohol at that time and extrapolate it back. I don't know if that's going to come in. So we will see. There's going to be much fighting about whether or not that will be allowed to come in. So chat with all of that. It is late on a Friday. There is a lot of this trial to go. Remember, we have a whole battle of the experts to get to in this trial. There are going to be accident reconstructionists. There are going to be multiple pathologists. We are going to have somebody talking about, somebody's talking about injuries to the victim. There is a long, long way to go with this case. Right now, what is clear to me is that it was snowing, that the defendant's statements were made but are ambiguous as to the meaning behind them and to who heard them. And I have a lot of side eye for this Section 12 hold right now. So can we get a pickle on the way out? We can absolutely pickle on the way out. We can absolutely pickle on the way out. So with all of that, let's pickle it into the weekend. And members, check your member spaces. There will be a post for those of you that are the level for Zoom calls. There will be a post in there about the Zoom call. You guys know the time. Don't worry. We are going to roll out other ways to participate in Law & Order Zoom calls in the future. So if you missed this one because you are not that level of member, that is okay. There will be more in the future. Members, I will see you. All right. Law Nerds. Oh, George hates it. George hates it. Sorry, George. To all of your paw nerds that I might have made crazy with our friend who I think right now is, we haven't officially named him, but that was the last swan song of Gorilla Grip Pickle Pal. Pickle Pal will get renamed next week for the trial. We will see where we end up with that renaming. Have a great weekend, Law Nerds. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Thank you for being here on stream and making this the #1 place to watch trial coverage. I love talking about it with you. I love watching the unexpected moments in court with you. Who knew my cousin Vinny would be such a big part of this case? And yet here we are. I'll see you on Monday. You can stay up to date with everything I'm covering and fast notifications on our free iOS and Android app at lawnerdapp.com or search the App Store for Law Nerd. You can also follow me around social media, and don't forget to check out my podcast, The Emily Show, with quick bits dropping every Monday, summarizing everything I do here on the live streams on Tuesday and Thursday for when you just have time for the quick bits. Thanks for being a Law Nerd.